All righty, we are good.
All right. Try this again. Hey, everybody. This is our August 20th City Council meeting for Glenwood Springs. Shoot, I do that. If all attendees tonight, we're obviously doing virtual. If you are calling in and you would like to comment, please press *9. That will give you a virtual hand raise, even if you're not visually present on the internet. Sorry, I don't know where words are right now. How about we just turn it over to Catherine and do roll call?
Willman?
Here.
Voorhees?
Yeah, sorry.
Rick, are you here?
Yes, I am.
You sound like you are in a tunnel. Your audio is not great.
I'm always in some kind of tunnel. No, I
There
am
we go.
here. Is that better? Okay,
Much better. Yeah.
thank you.
Pep?
Here.
Bodas?
Here.
Davis?
Here.
Stepp?
Yes.
Hershey?
Yes, present.
All right. Just a quick check. I have a couple fans on in my bedroom. Is there any background noise that's distracting for folks? Okay. All right. I'll start us off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Any agenda changes and conflicts? Does anybody have any agenda changes or conflicts of interest at this point? Paula.
I just had a question from one of our citizens who knew that we had filed, he had filed a quarter request on the agenda item on the riparian, and he wanted to know, since he couldn't get that quarter request fulfilled before this meeting, if we should be holding off on making a decision on riparian. So I'm really asking Carl, do we need to have that quarter request fulfilled prior to discussing that tonight?
I don't see how it affects your decision-making process. He made a request for documents, fairly extensive request for documents that we're working hard to fulfill. But as a deliberative body, I don't see how that affects your decision-making process.
Okay, thank you.
Perspective, whatever decision you make, you can make a different decision, but not based on that. It doesn't stop you from functioning.
Okay.
Thanks, Paula. Shelley.
I would like to request that, I believe it's item D on the consent agenda, which is the IGA with the school district regarding the 6F properties. If that could be pulled off and we could put that on our next agenda just for explanation and consideration, because the properties that we're considering there have some long-term implications, and I think it would be good just that everybody really understands what the trade-offs are and what we're doing with those properties.
Anybody else have an opinion? I'm fine with it. Paula, good. Charlie shaking his head. Charlie, okay. Yeah, let's kick that maybe to the next agenda item, or next agenda item, excuse me, the next agenda. First
Thank
meeting in
you.
September. All right. Any other conflicts of interest or agenda items? Yeah, okay. Let's see. Next up is citizens appearing before council. These are for items not on the agenda. So if you see it listed on the agenda, please reserve your comments for that time. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. And I'm looking for hands from any public comment. Sorry, I'm just pausing because usually we get somebody that comes in like 30 seconds after I close it with their hand up. So, all right, we've given it enough time. There are no, let the record reflect, there are no hands up for anybody who want to comment on items not appearing on the agenda. All right, we'll bring it back to council comments. Counselor Wilman, and then Voorhees,
Thank you.
and then Steph.
First of all, I think we as a council, I know we all believe this, but I think we should make in this meeting a formal thank you to the firefighters, both our own fire department for the work they have done, the U.S. Forest Service and all the firefighting teams that are out there fighting the Grizzly Creek fire, then got the other fire that was there last night, got the one in Rifle. I mean, these people are just doing a phenomenal job under very difficult circumstances. And I was glad to see, I went downtown to get dinner in the break, and I saw that there's a sign up. I hope that was ours. That says, "Thank you, firefighters," is on a stand at corner of 8th and Grand. Thank you, Deborah, for doing that. That's just a phenomenal thing. And I don't know that we can do something or not. This was a suggestion from a constituent, but somehow maybe have a thank you ceremony when we get closer to where these guys actually, guys and ladies, I don't want to be, guys and ladies can be there. And that suggestion was even have it at the memorial in the park. So I think we ought to at least look at that. I know we don't have a whole lot of funds, but it seems to me it might be something reasonable. The second thing is that the Downtown Development Authority met yesterday, and as some of you may have heard, we got bombed. And I've had a discussion with Deborah today about that. I think we need to make sure that all of our meetings that we have at boards and commissions are run like our council meeting, where we need to bring people in, because I think it's just, we don't want to have that happen again. It was embarrassing. We had, I think several of you were on the meeting. We had people from other municipalities in there. And so I think we need to be careful and make sure that our boards and commissions are using the same Zoom kind of source that we're using in these meetings to avoid that. And then I wanted to apologize to our participants in yesterday's meeting for that occurring. I think there was good progress made in the beginning of the DDA's reevaluation process. So thank you.
Charlie, did you say you got bombed?
Yeah.
Zoom bombed? Oh, okay. Thank you. I didn't hear you.
Zoom bomb. Sorry, Tony. I think that's the term. But that's
what the kids are saying. Thank you.
I got hacked. That's what I said.
Rick, go ahead.
Well, debt to our firefighters, it's just amazing how quick they were able to put out that Red Canyon fire yesterday, and how they've been able to marshal resources. We took a tour of the canyon. I'm totally in awe of the work that goes there. And if we're going to celebrate them, Charlie, we better do it quick, because there's some big fires raging in California at this time. So, Shelley also shared an article, and I don't know if you want to talk about it, but from the Colorado Sun, about the aftermath of the canyon and what's likely to happen after all the vegetation's gone. And it's not only rockfall on the road, but it's a pretty alarming sort of estimate of the sludge and silt that'll be washing into the river. And that has a direct impact on our recreation industries and our quality of life, and also our water supply. And so we've been taking water out of the Roaring Fork River for at least a week now. And I know that it's not always an inexhaustible source of watering lawns and things like that. But I think as a community, we need to be really vigilant and looking at what we need to do to ensure that we do have clean water and that life can go on. So if you haven't read that article, I'd recommend taking a look at it. And the last thing I was going to mention is that about 3 months ago, we started working on an ethics statement for the council. And I think it would be good to try to get some closure on that. I know how busy everybody's been with the fire and all the other agenda items that we have. And I just, I don't want to lose sight of that. I think it's an important way forward for the council.
Yeah, and Rick, I apologize. I think it's stuck on my desk. I thought I was going to get to it today. I am going to try to work on it tomorrow. So hopefully I can get a draft back out to the committee tomorrow or some by the end of the weekend. And I just have been busy at work and haven't gotten to it. So I apologize.
And thank you, Charlie. I mean, you're doing great on that. And if I can help in some way, I'd be willing to take some of the load off your burro, so to speak. So thank you.
Catherine Fletcher. Catherine raised her hand.
It's actually
Steve.
Steve.
He's got two names. Yeah, I'll fix it once I can tell which one's which.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're just addressing technical difficulties. Are we all good? I'm going to assume that's correct. All right. Paula, go ahead.
Reiterating what's already been spoken about, thanking everybody for helping out with the fire. Our staff has been amazing. Thanks for opening the rec center for an evacuation center. And the firefighters, of course, are dear to my heart, as they are to everybody, but with family members involved in that kind of work, I know what it means. And Charlie, I'm afraid, yeah, they may get sent right away to something else, but first they get a break at home. I am bringing up something that actually came in a discussion with one of our community members, an older community member, and it's something I'd like to kind of throw out there towards the rec center or a possible future discussion on having a place maybe that seniors could meet once a week and do a chat and chew or something like that, that maybe the city could get behind. That's just something to put on a topic for a future agenda, but I think it would be a nice amenity that hopefully would not cost too much to the city to set that up on a weekly basis or something.
And Paula, could I ask if you might include Judy Martin in that request, because she does such a great job in our community and the county with seniors.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else, Paula? Okay. All right. Shelley, go ahead.
Well, I think Rick brought up some of my comments on the water. You know, it's going to be a long haul to repair our watershed. And so we do need, as went out in the paper earlier this week, we do need all of the community to come together and do their best to save water and conserve our water. Our supplies are down right now, and we want to make sure we have enough on hand if we have a fire to fight here in town, and certainly to keep our quality and our quantities up just to meet our needs. So that's something that I think this community can come together and do, and we're certainly asking of everyone to do. The other thing I'd like to bring up is that, you know, we've seen this community over the years just really come together and help each other during these difficult times. And boy, if 2020 is going to go down in the history books as challenging for our city, first with COVID and now with the fire. And I think certainly our local businesses are, as was on the front page of the Denver Post this morning, getting a double punch. So I just had a suggestion to throw out. My family was actually planning on going on a family camping trip this weekend, and we've decided to stay home and do a staycay, and we're gonna just enjoy Glenwood Springs as a local and go to the pool and go to the hot springs, go out to eat and just enjoy a weekend here. And I would ask anybody to join me. I hope to see a lot of locals downtown, and let's just help out and support our local businesses. If you have shopping to do or gifts to buy, do it locally, and let's come together on this. Thanks.
Thanks, Shelley. Deborah, you have your hand up.
Oh, I just wanted to, Brian texted me that he is happy to work with Gary to put an official thank you ceremony together at the memorial. We have funding, so he will work on that. And then he also wanted to say that they do have a sit, chat, and play for seniors and some senior game clubs and tours. So Paula, I'm sure we can improve on it, but just to let you know, there is some of it already in place.
All right. Thanks for that, Brian and Deborah. Councilor Davis.
I just wanted to quickly apologize to the public for my virtual background this evening. I spent the afternoon as I'm traveling trying to find Wi-Fi, and once I finally found it, I'm sitting in somebody's personal closet. So it was kind of a requirement that I put up a background, but I wouldn't typically do that. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Steve. Any other comments? Well, I'll just, I guess I'll kind of echo, I don't know if it can be said enough, just how thankful we are for the firefighters that have come into our community and worked so hard to save it. You know, I'm also really, really grateful to our regional partners, the incident management team, and our residents for their patience and their grit in dealing with this. I know it's a really scary time for all of us. You know, these are the best firefighters in our county, in our country, and then they've just done a really great job. You know, and we do know, our community knows, and we need to keep reiterating that we are going to have long-lasting impacts from this fire. Hanging Lake has been impacted. It's not a total loss as it was first reported. Some of the pictures look, you know, promising, but we don't know what that's going to look like as mudslides and debris come to make its way into the watershed and how that might impact the actual beauty of that lake. We don't know the impacts to our watershed, Grizzly Creek, which is the majority of it in No Name, but it's severe. Grizzly Creek is completely burned out, and No Name is in really bad shape as well. We're going to have water quality issues, and we're going to have them for a long time, people. So we need to get an understanding that this is where we're at as a community, and it's going to be a slog. You know, every time there's going to be a rock slide in I-70 and I-70 gets shut down, it's going to impact our economy. And it's going to be happening with a much greater frequency in the coming years because of the lack of vegetation now in the canyon. You know, we've reached out. I just really want to thank Deborah and Carl, Gary and the staff. They've done a fantastic job reaching out to regional, state, and our federal delegation. And I also want to give a lot of credit to Senator Bennett, Senator Gardner, Congressman Tipton, Governor Polis. They've all contacted us. Dan Gibbs from the Department of Natural Resources, DOLA, Homeland Security. They've all contacted us and have taken the initiative to ask, what can we do for you? Do you have enough resources? What are your needs? And that kind of support, I think I want the public to know, is been really just overwhelming. And we have not been shy in asking and telling them what our needs are. You know, there's no silver bullet for our water issues and fire mitigation in the canyon. There's no amount of planning we possibly could have done for a black swan event like this. So, you know, anybody who's talking about, well, if we could have just done this or done this different, that's some Monday morning quarterbacking that's not helpful. This is the kind of thing that if you would have tried to plan for or engineer, we would have had a $50 million water system 40 years ago, and it just wouldn't have been, we wouldn't have water still today. So, you know, one of the things I think we need as we go through this recovery, and it was suggested to us by the Federal Emergency Management, is that what they have seen in communities that have had impacts like this, whether it be in California or Durango with the 411 fire several years ago, is having a citizens group that really is helping us and staff. You know, our staff is maxed out with everything in general, and we need people in the community to step up. So Deborah has already gotten the ball rolling. She's asked a number of people to serve on the citizens committee. Folks like Steve Beckley, Norm Batchelor, Mark Gould, Andy Mule, Colorado Water District. They've all committed to it. I personally would love to see a much larger group than that. We have, I mean, you can't turn around in this town without running into a water attorney or a water engineer. There's a lot of people with a lot of expertise and knowledge. And, you know, we need subgroups of this group. We need people that will focus on the economic recovery. We need people who will focus on water quality, on geological hazards, you know, citizens who work for companies like SGM and other community partners, people who would want to take part in the legislative outreach. So, you know, however this group comes together, I think it's really important for everybody in this community to not just water every other day and feel that they're doing their part, but we need community leaders throughout the community to step up and really, really help us. So, Council, I'd love your input on who else you can, you know, text or email myself or Deborah, who else you would want to see on this group. I'm of the opinion the more the merrier. Or if folks on council think this is not something that you know, that we should do this lift on our own, that's fine. But I would just love some feedback on your guys' thoughts on that, and bringing this a group of citizens together to help us out through this.
Well, I certainly support that move, Mr. Mayor and Deborah. I think it's a great idea. And, you know, I think I've talked to some of the restaurant people in the last couple of days. They're suffering. I think getting them involved in a group, even though they're not water engineers or water lawyers, thank God. Sorry, Carl. But no, seriously, you know, I think that's an important industry. The lodging industry get involved in that. You know, I think those are the people that are impacted economically by this. There was just one example, was the Daily Bread that was in the Denver Post article. But I really think those are other people we should be getting in to some group that, how do we recover from this? So.
Thanks, Charlie. So in general, would you, I guess, feel good about continuing to have staff work to recruit folks in the community to serve on our long-term, probably multi-year effort to recover from this fire?
Yep.
Awesome. All right, well, that's, I guess, my comments and my request. Carl, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to make sure that all of council has been just fantastic helping out through all of this. But I think that, you know, in a council form of government, typically the mayor just runs the meetings and they have a limited role oftentimes. And I just really wanted to say thank you to Jonathan as mayor. He gets, you know, late breaking texts from either Deborah or I about, you need to be on a phone call, or you need to be here, you need to be there. And, you know, Jonathan has really set aside a lot of his life to be that person that can be there in all of those meetings on behalf of the city. And I really wanted to express, I think, staff's gratitude for the enormous amount of work he puts in and his willingness to just set everything else aside so that he can be there for the city of Glenwood Springs. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Carl. And I know when I got on council that I did not realize, and I don't know if you guys had this experience too, I didn't realize how truly fantastic our staff is and how much I really love this town. And so maybe that's just an experience where I just thought I really liked this town, and then I really saw how it worked, and like, wow, this is an amazing community and amazing people. So thank you for that, Carl. All right, any other comments? Deborah.
I just wanted to follow up and thank you, Jonathan, but also thank the rest of council as well. Paula's been volunteering with the Red Cross. Shelley, you've also been in the majority of those, and you're also willing to also do anything in a drop of a hat. You've all shown tremendous leadership in all your boards and commission, and your support of staff is overwhelming. Thank you. Jonathan, I don't want your head to get too big.
Well, I just need to grow this out a little bit bigger then.
I think that's impossible. Not really.
All right. Let's go on to the consent agenda. Other than item D, which Shelley has asked to delay to a future agenda, can I have a motion?
I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item D, which will be postponed to another day.
I second the
Tony.
motion.
Thank you, Shelley. Motion by Tony, second by Shelley. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. First item on tonight's agenda is a continuation from our August 6th meeting. This is a riparian setback. I believe that—
Mr. Mayor, are we going to take up the issue on the consent agenda? The item C?
D.
Whatever D.
No,
whatever.
Shelley's request was to delay that to a future agenda. So not this agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that. My hearing. Apologize. Okay.
No problem. I think staff's request was that they have a little bit more time to do a presentation to get us all up to speed. And it might happen at the next meeting, and it might happen at the following one. But Tony, go ahead. Sorry.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 21, series of 2020, an ordinance of the city of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, amending section 70.10.070 of the Glenwood Springs Municipal Code regarding non-conforming use regulations, and section 0740, 040, 020 D24 of the Municipal Code related to riparian setbacks on first reading, subject to the following changes. Regarding code section 7010-070B, change minor repairs of to repair or maintain, and within the riparian setback to within or adjacent to the setback area. Regarding section 0740040220D24, 24A1, change 20% of the setback area defined below to the greater of 50% of the setback area defined below, or sub 2, a continuous area along the river or stream bank, which is up to 35 feet long and as wide as reasonably necessary to access and use the area along the river or stream. Regarding code section 0.704020D24, D24A3, add dead vegetation or after removal of. And finally, regarding code section 0704020D24, D24A4, little 3, change proposed to any and increase to a material increase in. Thank you.
Tony, can I just, there's a lot of words there. Can I just ask for a clarification though? You did say to change it from the 20% to the 50%. I just wanted to point that. Okay. I won't summarize that motion, but is there a second? Good. Steve.
You know, it seems like as Tony was reading that there was a lot or some minor wordsmithing in that. I would second his motion if he would amend that 50% to 33%, and then we could certainly discuss all these points.
I will do that, Mr. Davis.
Okay.
So,
It's been moved by Tony, seconded by Steve to revisit the percentage setback. Shelley.
I guess I have a procedural question, and I'd kind of like to call a point of order. We did have a vote at our last meeting after 4+ hours of public comment. And this council voted by majority to basically approve the ordinance with some minor edits to come back. But we did approve the 20%. So are we revisiting that tonight?
And I guess, Carl, my question would also be is this agenda item noticed to account for that?
Well, it is first reading on the ordinance, and so what changes you make, it is still a first reading. It was not actually approved, but we did have a vote on the 20 versus 50% at the last meeting. I can't remember what the numbers were on the 4352. That having been said, this is a first reading on an ordinance, so I think if council decides that as part of this ordinance they want to revisit that percentage, they can. I had asked for that motion so that I had clear direction on what to put in the ordinance. So I mean, from a legislative perspective, you can make that change again if you would like to. I would ask as we work through this, hopefully, I don't know if Tony has those changes in a form that maybe he could even email me so that I can kind of see what I'm looking at. That would be really helpful to me as I try to help you guys sort through where you're at in that document.
Yes,
Right,
sir.
and my comment would be that I believe the changes that Councilor Hershey read off were so extensive, I would have no way to evaluate those right now. I'd almost rather take a vote on the ordinance that was brought before us that we ask council, attorney council to bring back to us for consideration tonight.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead, Charlie.
I sent out, I did some wordsmithing earlier today, and like Catherine sent that out over the break. I don't know if you got it. And maybe Tony, you can answer this question. Did you see that? And it sounded like a lot of those were the ones that I kind of wordsmithed in. Is that what you're trying to do?
I saw that, yes. Thank you. And I will send that to Carl now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Charlie, was that your comment? Okay.
Wait a minute, I'm sorry, that was just a question. And I have to see the changes too, because I was trying to follow the ones I had, so I could see those changes in writing. I don't know that I can vote one way or the other on it. I would support the 33% if you want to comment.
You know, what I thought was going to be a continuation of the last meeting where we had some wordsmithing suggestions by Charlie. If we're going to relitigate this whole thing, we really need to get to our conversation on infrastructure and our water. So I guess I would ask this to either be a quick conversation and we can get through this quickly, because I don't want to be, you know, we need to be pretty focused tonight on having that presentation from Matt. So if we think we can wrap this up soon, that's great, but I don't want to spend an hour talking about this at the expense of the water. I'd rather get the water thing prioritized, infrastructure, and kick this back, because this can always happen at our next meeting again if we need to. It's been kicked around enough, and we've been dealing with it for 2 years. We don't have 2 years to deal with our water. So I guess I would just ask for our comments to be brief and poignant and get through things, if that's acceptable to folks. Okay. Rick, go ahead.
Just briefly, I have no idea what Councilman Hershey is suggesting until I see something in writing. We did get Charlie's suggested tweaks late this afternoon, and you know, it seems like if we're going to be working on this stuff, that we need to have it before us and not delivered verbally. I would have no idea what I would be voting on, and so I'm not going to support this motion. And I'm also going to encourage us not to delay this ordinance. This could go on. I can't remember who the celebrity was who said it, but it could go on not only all night, but for the next 6 months. And so I don't see the value in it right now. And that was my brief fling with trying to be poignant.
Good job. Shelley, go ahead.
I can't support this either. I think we had a lot of discussion last time, and it took us a while to get from the 10% to the 20%. I think, is it what Catherine sent out, Charlie? You have red lines, but I got a black and white document, so I can't really tell what's edited and what's not.
It's what Catherine set out, and my changes appear in the one that I have in front of me in red, where the ones that Carl's office did were blue, and I don't know how that happened when everybody else got it, but if you got a black and white, I sent it in with the normal red line coloring. So
right, and so, you know, without having time to really review those changes, I do see something. Yeah, it would be tough to.
So
it looks like you have the 20% in there. I'm not sure what I'm looking at here.
Okay, so let me see if I can help. There was in the packet a red line document which was based on the direction given by council at the last meeting.
Right.
This afternoon, Charlie, and I'm going to tease our profession, did some additional wordsmithing, which he sent out late this afternoon, and I think there was some confusion on getting it to the rest of council, but you probably got it around 5:30 this afternoon. That should reflect some additional changes. I don't know if those are in a different color or not. When you pull them up, you'd have to open them in Word.
And did that come from Catherine?
Yeah, and it should have come from Catherine.
Okay.
Steve Davis probably is not. I doubt. I'm guessing he's working off of his phone, so I don't know that he has the ability to see either that document easily, or I just forwarded the proposed changes that Tony just made in his motion to all of council, as well as to, hopefully I got all the staff that needed to see that as well, so that we know what we're all looking at. I think the struggle I have right now is that in this particular format, it's very hard for me to walk through easily with you those 3 documents without being prepared to walk through those 3 documents. As much as I hate to kick a can down the road, if you want to consider all 3 of those, and unless Tony and Steve want an immediate vote on the motion that Tony made, it's probably better if I put together a full set of red lines that have all 3 different proposals clearly indicated, so you can all see what was just proposed late this afternoon by Charlie and Tony, as well as what staff had put together, because I don't know how else to present it to you.
Okay, and from what I'm reading in Charlie's, that was still at the 20%.
I was still at the 20%. I think reflective of your vote that you took. He made some other tweaks, you know,
Okay.
fine pruning, cutting, trimming, whatever.
And they may be fine. I just, without having time to review them.
Right.
And I apologize for the late thing. I was trying to get a copy and my schedule and Carl's didn't match. And so by the time I got it from Carl, it took me the late afternoon to get it out. So I would move that we table this to the September 3rd meeting.
I'll second the motion.
Well, you have a motion on the table.
Yeah.
Motion to table takes precedent over the underlying motion.
Right.
I would not support that motion to table this. I'll jump in. I see some hands, but I just want to say real quick that I had a comment. Somebody who was not happy at this riparian ordinance call me and threatened to bulldoze his entire riparian zone before this thing took effect so he could get grandfathered status. I think there's urgency to pass this now, so before he can procure that said bulldozer and get grandfathered status and take out his riparian zone so he can maintain what he feels are his property rights. So if this motion fails, I'll make a motion to accept for this first reading to move it along the original staff definition, sans Charlie's wordsmithing at the last meeting, sans Charlie's wordsmithing today, to get it to a second reading. So hopefully we can make the tweaks and have time to review them at our next meeting. Paul.
That.
Boy. This is more my comment from my hand being raised. I feel similar to Shelley. I feel like a lot of stuff has been thrown at us, and trying to make a decision. I've spent a lot of time on this between the numerous pages of documents and comments and changes. I think it's an important decision and discussion. And I understand what you're saying, Jonathan. I'm a little appalled that we have friends of the Roaring Fork telling us that they're the best conservators of our river, and then threaten to bulldoze to the riverside. That just is a complete conflict of trying to find something here at a common ground. So I would like clarity on everything that's being thrown at us. And the only, I do have difficulty with Tony's request in his proposal as well, asking for 35 feet for every property, because if you look at a 50-foot or a 75-foot front of a river, that's a huge percentage of that lot. And it takes away from our goal of protecting our waters in our riparian area. So my suggestion is we wait till September 3rd. I know it's another 2 weeks out. So that's where I stand at this point. But there's just a lot of, I didn't even realize Charlie or Catherine had sent us a change with Charlie's changes at 5:30 because I was taking a dinner break. So I missed that. I'm sorry.
All right. I think just to clear the table, I'd like to call a vote on this particular motion and then open it up to additional comments if that's acceptable to everybody. So
the motion to continue, Jonathan.
The motion continue. Okay. So that would be to continue this conversation to our next meeting in its entirety.
Actually, can I withdraw my second?
Yes.
Because based on, I prefer your alternative at this point.
I'll second it.
Motion continue, which we'll just take your word, Charlie, that it take precedent. You could probably say anything, we'd probably believe it. Motion.
Parliamentary procedure.
I figured. Motion by Charlie, seconded by Tony. Catherine, please take roll.
What is the motion?
Charlie, can you repeat your motion?
My motion is to continue to table, which is effectively that's a parliamentary motion you made when you want to table something to a time certain. There are two types of table, that or table side die, which means it never comes back on the board. But I moved to table it until September 3rd, which is the same thing as continuing it.
Charlie,
Table.
I'm sorry, Charlie. Point of order. When you table that, I think my motion would remain until it's voted on, though, correct, on the next date, because we haven't voted.
That would be correct.
Thank you.
This is what you get when you put 3 attorneys in the same virtual box together.
I'm a prosecutor. I'm not a lawyer.
Charlie, what motion can I make that takes precedent over your motion to table? Nothing?
You're actually not supposed to even have discussion on a motion to table, but I was just shutting you up. So.
All right. I'm going to brush up on my Robert's Rules of Orders. Catherine, can you take roll? Not roll. Call the question. Sorry.
Voorhees,
Rick?
I'm
Rick-
sorry, I didn't hear.
Rick said no, I believe. Rick, can you give a thumbs up if you said no?
Yes. No.
Probe,
No.
Davis,
Reluctantly, yes.
Step,
You're muted. Paula, you're muted. I'm sorry.
This motion is to continue to September 3rd. I know we had 3 different things out of the table. Is that correct?
Yes.
That is correct.
Yes.
Willman,
Yes.
Godus,
No.
Hershey,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right, we will see you on first reading with a pending motion from Tony. We'll go ahead as staff and provide the 3 red lines for your consideration in 2 weeks.
Next item. Let me find my agenda. Item number 9, this is continuation from August 6, 2020. Infrastructure discussion, but I think if folks are okay, a lot of this conversation is going to be informed by Matt Langhorst's presentation on water, which I guess is an infrastructure conversation. So Matt, talk about our water and our infrastructure in general.
Good evening, Council. It has been an interesting 11 days, that is for sure. I want to start out with, I don't know how I want to start out this conversation, to be honest with you. Let's start out with watering restrictions discussion, maybe. We asked all of the residents to go to, and large users and some other people, and we'll have more discussion. We've asked all the residents to go to an alternating schedule. If you have a odd address, you get the odd days. If you have an even address, you get the even days. The large water users like the schools, the parks, those kinds of people that have much larger irrigation needs are on a little bit different schedule, especially in the south side of town. They're not odds and evens. We actually have them on a specific schedule so that when the really big users going one day, the next really big users going the next day, and the medium users kind of fall into days in between, so that we can keep the Cardiff tank as full as humanly possible. They've been doing that for a month, at least at this point. Some of the larger users on the top side here, Two Rivers Park, Veltus Park, the schools, GSES, those kinds of things, they're not necessarily, and I want to make this clear, they're not necessarily on an odd even day because of an address. They're more set on schedules, but we've given them so that they're not all going at the same time. And that large, once again, 2 large users aren't going at the same time. Maybe they're spaced days apart from each other. So I think there's a little confusion about that, and I completely understand the confusion because we are tweaking water usage all over town as much as we possibly can to try to conserve water and space it out, but still let people water their lawns. So that being said, the most interesting thing, because I'm literally looking at the Red Mountain Water Treatment Plant monthly report, is on Sunday, the 16th. I have to get my days right here because we don't go out days. Sunday the 16th. So we went off of full water restrictions on Saturday, and that was a odd day. So odd users went, and we used about 3.6 million gallons of water. Not too bad. That's not terrible. On Sunday, the even users went, and they used 4.4 million gallons of water. So there was about, an 800,000 gallon difference there. And that 4.4 million gallons of water was the third highest day we've had this summer. So just getting some perspective here. Odd users went, they bumped up about 200,000 gallons. Even users went, they bumped down about 500,000 to about 3.8. And then yesterday, for whatever reason, we went back up to 4.3 million gallons of water. That was the sixth highest day of the entire summer. So what I'm telling you at this point is, and I'll get to more detail in some other conversations, is the alternating day thing. I'm not sure if people aren't abiding by it. I'm not sure if people have just taken their zones and said, if I can only water today, not tomorrow, I'm going to make my 15-minute zone a 30-minute zone. I'm not exactly sure what's happening. But at that rate, with the pumps running and No Name not actually having enough water in it. So maybe this is where I step back and have a little bit of how our water system conversation works. We have the Grizzly Creek pipeline that we use. We pull water out of Grizzly Creek about 3.8 miles up Grizzly Creek. Most of the burn area so far that looks really, really bad is about 3.79 miles up Grizzly Creek. I flew it today. The fire didn't actually hit the pipeline. It stopped, 10 feet short of our pipeline, which was amazing. Thanks, firefighters. So Grizzly Creek is burning. We can't get to that source right now. We probably don't want to turn that source on immediately, until these storms pass, but we may get in there next week and we may crack it again. Because Grizzly Creek then transfers through a 3,000-foot tunnel that goes over to No Name Creek. At about 3.5 miles up No Name, and then it transfers down to a intake structure we have at the bottom of No Name, right above the Newcastle resident or No Name residence down there. We're only able to pull about 5.14 CFS out right now, which calculation wise is not enough water to cover 4.3 million gallons. So we aren't actually able to switch No Name back on at this point and even cover the water usage in town. So we are leaving the pump stations on for at least today and probably tomorrow. I need some thoughts from council on, is Saturday and Sunday and Monday maybe nobody waters outside day, and then we can turn No Name back on and have enough water? Because the days that we did put water restrictions on, we went to 3 million gallons a day. That is doable. Sorry, I should get my calculator. I should have done this before and had it sitting in front of me. We can cover about 3.3 million gallons of water with the water that's in No Name right now. So if nobody waters outside, we can cover that. If people water outside, even if we were alternating days and people are realistic on how much water they put on their lawn, we could probably still cover that. But we're not seeing realism. We're seeing the third highest and the sixth highest day in the summer during water restrictions in water usage. So I'm kind of at a point of, do we just leave the pumps on, which is extremely manually intensive for us right now? We're working on switching the system over to a more automated system. But I have staff working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week right now to make sure that the pump system's functioning. We don't overflow tanks. We don't over inundate the water plant. All kinds of other fun tweaks that have to happen when the pumps are on. If we shut the pumps off and go to No Name, then over the weekend, let staff have a little bit of a break, then we might have to just do watering restrictions completely over the weekend. But how do you notice that on a Friday and actually have people do it on a Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So we're kind of at a point where maybe we just have to leave the pumps on until we're able to physically get back up to Grizzly, do some really good water sampling up there to see what water's coming into the intake, and make sure that we can crack that intake just a tiny bit to get 2 or 3 CFS to get us back up to the 7.5 or 8 CFS total that we need to run the city on a, call it a normal basis. So I'm open to ideas. You know, I think basically the only idea is to probably run the pumps through the weekend and try to deal with ICP and see if we can get back up to Grizzly and crack it, or at least test the water on Monday, Tuesday, and see if we can crack it a little bit, since the pipe did not burn down so far with the fire. Also understanding that Grizzly is still on fire. No Name is still on fire. When we flew it, there's pockets of fire. It doesn't look terrible from a layman's perspective when you're flying over it in a helicopter. Grizzly Creek, definitely the east side of it is still on fire. So there's potential that these rain events could kick debris down into any of these intakes and potentially cause us a little bit of problem within the piping system itself and at the plant, because the plant is not designed to take heavy sediment loads for kind of long durations of time, we'll call it.
And if I can, Matt, I just wanted to jump in. You know, the reason the plant isn't designed that way is because in the 1885 was when the pipeline was put in out of Grizzly and No Name, bringing water down to the city of Glenwood Springs between 1885 and 1890. And, over that, whatever that is now, 130 years, 140 years, the one thing we've always had that everybody else on the Colorado River system has been envious of is the fact that we have very high quality water naturally occurring in these really great basins that come down off the flat tops. And in particular, the Grizzly Basin delivers a lot more consistent, reliable flows than No Name does. It's a much bigger basin, and it's really, even though we have 8 CFS of decreed water in Grizzly Creek and 12 in No Name, the reality is No Name never produces that much water. Just physically as flows, whether we have the legal ability to take it or not. And so that's the reason why the system is designed the way it is. The treatment facility is 130, 140 years of the highest quality water in the state. The pump station, built in 97, was really, before that, there was no backup supply in Glenwood Springs. We either had the pipe coming down from Grizzly and No Name, or we had no water. And that pump station was always designed as an emergency station to really cover in-house use only needs while we were doing maintenance on the 24-inch line when we were starting with full tanks, or in the event we had something like, you've heard me talk about my biggest thought about the risk to the water system was a big rock taking out the 24-inch pipe at some location. Well, that's identify the problem. It's a relatively short-term fix. It was not to be operating over this long-term with the kind of changes in sediment loads that we're going to see more than likely as this fire continues to progress onto the flat tops. And it's not going to be unique to us. That sediment load is going to increase in the Colorado River, and that's going to have some impacts operationally, probably farther downstream than us as well. But I just wanted to be really clear on that. You may hear some things in the public about, oh, they didn't design for it, they should have thought about this. This is really something in 140 years. A large forest fire and sediment loading was not one of those things that I think anybody would have thought about with that particular system over the long term in the way it is. The great thing is we have a lot of partners who are coming in with a lot of technical expertise to help on watershed rehabilitation, but that's going to take time. And so what Matt's going to describe in terms of our options moving forward are really built around this idea that we're going to have a period of time where that watershed has to recoup and regrow back in and create all those great filtering mechanisms that it does naturally, and why we have such high quality water. So anyway, I'll be quiet now.
Oh, and it's a really good point by Carl. And part of the reason it was built in 97, and that didn't really tell Carl about, is there was a lot of work that was done on the system upstream of that in 1999. I mean, there was a new head gate in Grizzly, there was new pipes in Grizzly. There's a lot of work that has been done, and that pump station allows that work to occur. So that rock comes down, takes out a section of line, we lose some flow, fine. We go to the pump station, we replace the pipe. We need to do maintenance on a whole entire area. Pumps go on, we do the maintenance, we turn the pumps back off, we go back to our spectacular water source. I always say in everything that Coors would be jealous of our water, because they would be. So the pumps were not exactly designed to do what they are probably going to be asked to do over a small duration, hopefully a small duration of time here. What we're planning on doing is several steps. One, the pump station is not automated at this point. We are going to VFD drive it and put some automations in there. Fairly inexpensive thing to do. It doesn't have to be staffed continuously at that point. We can set alarms on and all kinds of other things that the plant has, the wastewater plant has, lift stations have. We have alarms all over. So when things go wrong, we can react to them. So that is going to happen at a very rapid pace. We are working on turbidity alarms to be put into No Name Creek. We'll set up a little station. When the sediment in the creek gets higher than we would like it to be, we can automatically close the No Name Creek gate and flip the pumps on because they'll be automated at that point, and we can seamlessly kind of switch back and forth between the two sources. A little more challenging is we'd like to do the same turbidity alarms and potentially automated gate at Grizzly. That'll be batteries and solar panels and a few other things. It'll be a challenge, but we have the ability to do that, and we will do that. And these are things that have been talked about before. One, it's been working for 140 years, why spend so much money on trying to automate things? But when the fire starts in the bottom of Grizzly and you no longer can get to that gate, now you see why you might want to put an automated gate on there, even if it costs you money to do that. But once again, Grizzly's our supplement. No Name works really well for us in the spring runoff and into the beginning of the summer. I want to say we hiked up there 5 or 6 weeks ago, turn the Grizzly gate on just to supplement that No Name water and make sure that the fish habitat in No Name is nice and stable. At this 5.14 CFS out of No Name, there is some bleed by and we'll keep the fish habitat going, but it's not much. And we'd like to see it be more because we are environmentalists in ourselves, trying to save as much water and provide as much water as possible for the needs of the habitats. So, there's possibility that we'll get up to Grizzly soon. It will crack it back on as long as the water's good, and we can start supplementing and using No Name, because it's No Name Grizzly at that time, to run water. Until we know then, we're going to be probably running off of pumps. So, Carl, you really want me to go over thought processes on how to move forward?
Matt, there's some hands up, so maybe we can ask some questions for you, but I am very interested to hear on how to move forward. But I see Steve, Tony, and Shelley. I don't know if those hands were up from the last item agenda or if people still had questions. So Steve, go ahead.
Talking to me.
I'm talking to you.
My hand was up, I don't know, on the last item.
Okay. Tony, is that for you as well? Okay. Okay, somebody else took their hand down. Matt, how do we fix all of this? Oh, Shelley, go ahead. Shelley, go ahead.
Sorry. I didn't mean to take it down if it did go down.
Okay.
Just a quick question, Matt, for the water usage that you read off earlier, did we reach out to all the big irrigators again and have them shut it down, as well as to make sure we're not watering our city parks and that kind of thing? Are we all in compliance with that?
So without going and checking all of the big users individually and what their time clocks say, like I said, the big users on the south end of town, they are used to a schedule. It's about this time of year we put them on a schedule, and that's to conserve the water in Cardiff. And it's actually a very water conserving schedule. So they're already on a schedule. Everybody kind of the north end of town, including the parks, we reached out to parks and basically said, hey, go to an alternating day schedule. The park is so big. I mean, you could say it's like Two Rivers Park is 740, I believe. You could say it's on an even day. In their particular case, I don't really care when they're watering as long as it's every other day and it's not in conjunction with another large water user in the exact same day if all possible. So parks is, as far as I can tell at this point, changed their watering schedule. I haven't been out there and stood in the middle of the park to see if I'm getting sprayed or not on every other day, but they have said they've done that. They've also
Okay.
volunteered some of the more established park, like Sayre Park and Veltus Park. They volunteered those to go to every second day or every third day or every fourth
Right.
day, because they don't need as much water since it's an established facility at that point. So they're doing everything that they can, as far as I'm talking to them, and Mike Hoffman is talking to them, to save as much water as humanly possible, but still keep the grass sort of green.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, that's awesome.
But because we're
Okay.
also in COVID still, and people want to use the parks. So it's this
Right.
conflicting thing of, we want to be outside and not walking on dead grass, but we still need to conserve water. So they're doing everything that they can, as far as I can tell. Dan, Nate, and Brian, as far as I can tell, they're doing a great job. So I know we've received some criticism for that, but people also don't understand that a big user is a different conversation than a residential user. We need to watch the big users as closely as possible. We've even received calls on the Glenwood Middle School. They're like, they're watering every day. I don't care. They're off of an irrigation ditch that's not hooked to our system. They're off the Reynolds and Kane ditch. So
Uh-huh.
I have no use of that water. I can't use that water, and that water is running out of Mitchell Creek. So it's the
Okay,
things
great.
it's the small things that people don't understand throughout the city. Glenwood Meadows hasn't seen water since we turned the raw water system off, because all of their irrigation out there is raw water.
Okay.
So I feel bad for them. They don't even have an alternate system to even go to even try to water their lawns. That includes the community center, the community gardens, the hotels, everybody out there. They don't have irrigation water right now until we turn No Name back on, because it's all raw water that's pre-treatment water. So it
Okay.
goes to the vault and then goes out. So,
Okay, great.
even the pool is cut back. I mean, the pools are working with us. They're doing a great job in irrigating. They're using as little water as possible. I believe I read that they turned off the pumps and all the circulation system for the nice new luge kind of float system that they have. So we're trying to hit all those big people. It's just the small users that over 3,000 of them add up really quickly. And that's basically the only thing that we can see at this moment that says we're overwatering, because we're talking to everybody else individually, basically. So I'm kind of at that point of, we can't switch back to No Name because there's just not enough water coming out of the creek to even supply water into town. We're almost 1 million gallons short, which is like only 1.5 CFS, but it's 1.5 CFS I don't have, which is why I'd like to get back to Grizzly now, knowing the pipe isn't burned. Sometime, hopefully next week, maybe we know what the fire is doing a little bit better in there. And if it's controllable or it's been controlled, we'll turn that pipe back on a slight amount. I don't want to turn it on fully because we could get some large debris in the pipe and that would cause me more problems, but just enough to get water back into No Name so that we can run off a normal raw water system out of the two creeks. But don't be fooled. We will be turning these on and off and on and off, and pumps on and No Name on. And we will have to play with this for a while until we figure out what kind of debris and sediment's going to come out of these burn areas once the whole thing is said and done. So the two simple long-term things that we're looking at, which you could say you guys should have done this in the first place, but once again, it's like, is it throwing millions of dollars at something that you don't really need when we have enough infrastructure issues, as Tony would love to talk about on top of that. But basically, one of the problems we have is that raw water, or that pump station, connects directly to the 24-inch raw water line that passes right by the pump station on 8th Street. So there is no way to run No Name Creek, Grizzly Creek raw water and the pump station at the same time. The pressures don't work. It just doesn't physically function through the system. So the simplest thing we can do, which is still complicated, is take that pump station offline from the raw water system and actually run a new pipe up to the water treatment plant that is solely meant for the pump station to push water up to the treatment plant. So if we wanted to run both sources at the same time, so say I'm a CFS and a half short from the No Name Creek, I could turn a VFD drive pump on and say, hey, pump me a 1.5 CFS during the day to make up that water. And we can do that. We could do that. So I already have consultants working on that. We're literally having a meeting tomorrow and we're starting that process. And we've already talked to some people about funding mechanisms for that. Because it won't be cheap. It's about 3,700 linear feet up there. And that's a 12, 15 inch type pipe. So it's not an inexpensive proposition, which is why it's never been done, because it was just an expense that wasn't really necessary at that moment. The other thing we're going to see with this is excess debris. Once again, Carl mentioned we have really good water. As it rains, sediment will come off of these burned hillsides, bringing ash, bringing soils that normally wouldn't erode to the creeks. It'll bring sediment to us. So at some point, we're probably just going to have to accept that sediment's coming to us and not turn No Name off. As long as it's not too heavy a sediment, it's just mixed in kind of floating sediment, and let it come to the water treatment plant. We don't have the ability to treat that water on a long-term basis, but we can build in front of the water treatment plant a sedimentary basin. So basically, pump water would come in there, the 24-inch raw water line would come in there, and it would be an entire basin in front of the treatment facility that its whole entire job is mix water sources so that they're consistent and drop sediment out prior to actually hitting the treatment process. We have consultants looking at that also at this moment in a schematic format, just to see costs, what size that thing would need to be, how we would build it into the hillside. If you've been to the water treatment plant, it's not built in the most convenient location to just sprawl with buildings. So, you know, we're working on that at this moment also. And then the long-term thing, which the Bear teams, I mean, the federal and state outreach at this point has been unbelievable. Having never been through a wildfire, there are so many cogs, but they all seem to mesh together fairly well because they've done this before in the state of Colorado. But that's moving into what does the basin, watershed basin rehabilitation look like? What are immediate things we can do now, whether that's check dams or debris flow structures or whatever it is? Because kind of the worst case scenario is, what if a massive rain event happens when one of these basins, say the No Name Basin, decides to send a debris flow down the basin? We probably don't have an intake structure anymore. It would probably wipe that out. So we're starting to work with the state and federal groups on figuring out, using their expertise, because this is what they do, on what should we expect and what can we do to make sure that these worst case scenarios don't happen to us. Basically, if we have to clean up some rockfall or something out of the creek farther up, that's an acceptable thing. If we have to clean up rockfall out of our middle of our intake structure, that's not an acceptable thing. So what can we do to protect ourselves and then rehabilitate our basins that we rely on so heavily? Questions?
Tony has been waiting very patiently. Tony, Rick, and then Paula. Go ahead, Tony.
So first of all, I want to say how prescient I was to put infrastructure unfortunately on the agenda, but I didn't know it was going to be like this, but I'm glad we're talking about it. Do you think, Matt, I heard you mention this every other day. I like your idea. So could you tell me how this would work or what it would benefit? So we do every other day and then no on the weekends. Is that what you're saying?
That's not what I'm saying right now. That is a really interesting idea, though. What I'm saying is, what I was saying for this weekend is that in essence, to try to give my staff a little bit of a break. If we could just cut off watering for Saturday and Sunday and people actually abided by it, I could flip No Name back on and we wouldn't have to run the pumps.
Because that would be like a 4/7. My math is terrible. Maybe Mr. Voorhees can help me when I'm done. But that would be like 3 or 4/7 cut if everyone abided, even if most people did, right? It's certainly 2/7 if you did weekends.
Basically, we would be looking to cut about 1 million gallons of water a day out, which is it's actually a little more than that if people don't water outside. We cut about 1.2 to 1.3.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Rick, go ahead.
A couple of observations about what you talked about. this is a problem that if we don't address it in some way is going to be with us for at least 4 years or more, given what we know about the soil out there, given what we know about the half-life of the retardant. All of those issues are things that say that there's just no easy fix going forward. And hindsight's always better than foresight, but I just want to be sure everybody understands that this isn't something that could be tackled in a year and delivered so that the community's bulletproof next year, the year after. And the second observation is whatever it takes to get the water use down is what this council ought to be voting for. If you're asking for a vote or you're just asking for sort of our nod, if we have a fire that breaks out in town and we're not able to put enough pressure on our hydrants because people have nice green lawns, I'm sure most people would probably trade adequate pressure of the fire hydrant for a green lawn. So, I think any strategy that you think works well is something that I would line up right behind. It's just unacceptable to, be using that amount of water in a drought and in a wildfire situation. So that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Rick. Deborah, go ahead.
I just want to make sure we're not getting in a situation where we're going to ask you about like which part of, water restrictions we should do. I think, we're probably just generally having this conversation with you to get you up to speed, help you understand. And then of course, always take your feedback, but you don't want us coming to you every time we have to do water restrictions.
Right? Everybody?
Deborah's correct. I mean, I guess maybe I didn't state that correctly. I just want to warn you that there may be a decision made very early tomorrow morning that we will restrict water usage outdoors on Saturday and Sunday and possibly Monday, so that we can catch back up, get No Name back on, give the crew a little bit of time to sleep, and regroup until we can figure out what the Forest Service is going to let us do and how the fire migrates over those basically Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so that we can make some good decisions on what to do with our water system. That's it.
All right. Paula.
Thank you for all of that, Matt. I'm glad that you were there and invested your brain power to get all of that stuff together to present to us. The federal or state infrastructure expertise and help, is that coming with funding? With whatever they suggest we do? This is a Deborah.
That's a Deborah question.
I would say we're working very hard on that piece. Yes, there are funds available and we are doing everything we can to help the city of Glenwood Springs. And then I'm also trying to make sure that our neighbors who are also impacted by this, Silt and Newcastle, are included in this conversation because we are one community and, we're all, we all depend on each other.
Right. And the sedimentary pond, I think you mentioned somewhere along the way, I just kind of in the back of my head, I remember that came up somewhere, and that was quite an expense as well. And that we would look for some kind of grants and funding if we went that route of putting that in, because I remember a multi-million-dollar number to develop something like that.
So previously, what we had talked about up at the water treatment facility was that the state may require us to build a clear well. That in theory would be a well on the back side of the process. So that when the water comes out, it's mixed with a little bit more chlorine and we make sure we have our proper contact time. Because right now we have kind of not an odd plant, it's just an older plant that we basically put chlorine kind of in along the process. So our contact time is part of the process. That's not super normal nowadays. The state has kind of given us a reprieve on that. We've got some plant adjustments that we're going to do to increase contact time within the plant. So that is probably going to hopefully get pushed off a little bit, because now we have this discussion of we may have to put a sediment basin in front of the plant instead of a clear well on the backside of the plant. And to be honest with you, the sediment basin may actually help us with contact time. Maybe we can start a process a little bit earlier and avoid a clear well discussion for a longer duration at a time. So, I really look at the sediment basin as more of a mixing basin. So if I need two water sources, I can put them together at the same place and let them have time to kind of commingle within that basin, drop some sediment out of it while it's in there. If we can throw a little chlorine at it at the same time and increase our contact time duration, spectacular. But I want the water to enter the plant in kind of its natural state as it would now, or would have post or pre-fire, and just be able to not have to adjust how the plant operates much. So just sort of figuratively speaking, we've never run, we as the current staff, I'm sure Milliard and all the guys know how much this was going to cost us, but we've never run the pumps continuously before. So they cost $1,000 a day to run, just in electricity. And then the plant is not used to the sediment load coming out of the Roaring Fork River, which isn't bad right now. So imagine spring runoff for this conversation, if we have to do it then, costs us about 3 times as much chemically to treat the water. So you're looking at somewhere between $500,000 to $750,000 change in just operations of the plant in the system by running the pumps over a year. So that is a significant change that we do not want to have to incur. It seems better to spend that money in a lump up front, put piping in, put a sediment basin in, so that the operations of the plant can be nice and smooth and consistent again for the long haul.
And then one last question on the amount of watering that's happening in the 450 million gallons that we're using a day. I presumed that most of that kind of usage in the summertime was from the big users, as Shelley said. If we're really worried about 3,000 plus households using that large amount of water, that's hundreds of thousands of gallons a day per household. Is there any chance there's leakage? Once again, an infrastructure question that may be accounting for some of this.
So it's not 450 million, it's 4.3 million.
Oh, 4.3 million. Okay, thank you.
So let's just go for relatives. Sorry, I'm looking to the side because I'm looking at 3 other screens at this point. In June, the average was 3.4 million gallons a day.
Okay.
For everyone, big users, little users, everything. The max day was 4.1 in June. You flip to July, the average is 3.8. And that's because it's hotter. People bump up their irrigation a little bit. Maybe they run it a little bit more. Big users, small users, everybody. And just remember, we don't have that many big users. We've got like Cardiff and some schools and some ballparks. I mean, it's not like we have 100 of them. We have a certain amount, which is why we are able to contact them and keep them in control. Max use in July, which was one of the 2 days that was above that Saturday or Sunday, was 4.7 million gallons. So it must have been a hot day, or all the big users were running at one time trying to catch up on something. I don't know what that day was. It was, I could probably even tell you what the day was. Not that makes any difference. It doesn't matter. So the average so far in August was rounding itself out at about 3.9. And that's with everybody watering normally, doing everything that they normally do. We had only seen 2 days that had hit 4 million in August prior to the fire. And then 2 days after that, we've put watering restrictions on, out of 5, we've hit over 4 million gallons of water. We're averaging more right now than we were for the first 10 days of August, which were hot as all get out, as we know. So it's like people have almost decided that they're just going to use more water on the day that they're allowed to, because I know the big users are cut back. I mean, I can go verify that tomorrow if you want me to, but the big users usually abide by what we ask them to. Sopris Elementary, poor Sopris Elementary, I was there yesterday, their grass is crunchy. And I appreciate David doing that and the school district doing that, but they can't be using a bunch of water because their grass is crunchy. So
no, my question really was, there's no possibility of leakage. And my numbers are wrong. I know I threw out the wrong number, but the users that are using this up then.
We do infiltration testing and we do water leak analysis on the entire system every single year. So you'd have to have a pretty significant leak. Our biggest leak used to be the community center. We fixed that one. You know, but if there's a massive leak out there, we would have found it during our leak analysis. We have the system tested. We basically do the entire system over 2 years. And sometimes the really prone areas we hit every single time the leak tester's out here once a year.
Okay.
So infiltration's probably not, anything is possible because I don't know what's going on. But it's unlikely because it would be fairly consistent.
If I can jump in, Paula, two things. One, we found in 2001, 2002, when we imposed watering restrictions, use went up. And it's a not uncommon phenomenon when you don't have a system that is in place that gets used on a really regular basis, like you know, say Denver Water is a good example where they have always had, as far back as I can think, they've had a consistent system about which days you get to water on their system, drought or not, when they put in. And so everybody's really familiar with that system. The other thing I'd point out is that if you just, you know, that round number of say 3,000 households, even an additional 100 gallons is 300,000 gallons. And so when we're talking about a shift between, you know, 3.9 and 4.4 or 4.2, I mean, that's really what you're talking about. I mean, you're talking about a relatively small number at each household. And I will tell you, my experience has been working with, in Glenwood in particular, is that I can tell when watering restrictions are on because there's water running down the driveways when I walk through town. And it's a natural thing we do. It's hard not to do. I don't want to be flippant about it, but it is something that we have struggled with because it is so unusual that we need to impose restrictions.
Okay, thank you.
I was warned in advance that this would happen, just so you know. Not by Carl either.
Any other questions for Matt? Deborah?
I think, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, we still want them to talk about the emergency ordinance as well?
I would think so.
Okay.
Who's leading that charge?
I am. So one of the things that's interesting, we simply had no penalties other than the general penalty for violation of water restrictions in the code. So we, in an effort to try to help provide a number of tools, you know, because obviously we're not going to sentence you to 364 days or $1,000 for not abiding by the water restrictions, but at the same time, we do need some kind of, and we don't want to write a summons into court during COVID over that same thing. So what you have in front of you in ordinance number 22, series of 2020, is we styled it as an emergency ordinance because we are in an emergency right now. All that, I'll explain what that means in a second. But really, this just creates a graduated schedule of fines for violations that can be issued as a penalty assessment for violating either the city manager's order or council if you were the one to establish the order, or some other designee, like if Matt was delegated that authority to issue penalty assessments for violations. Obviously, compliance is always our goal. And so, you know, typically the first contact in any of this stuff is educational. We have door hangers, all those kinds of things on water conservation. This just lays it out clearly so that a first offense would be 50, a second offense 100, third offense 250. Subsequent offenses then would trigger that just going into court. So you'd really have to be working at it to get there. But we felt it was important to have that tool available rather than just relying on the general, 364 days in jail or $1,000 fine, having to make it a summons to go into court. So that's really all this is. The emergency, styling it as an emergency ordinance simply means that it is effective on second reading. It doesn't have to wait for publication on second reading to be effective. So if you adopted it tonight and we went to second reading on September 3rd, it would be effective on September 3rd. That's under the charter, all the faster that an emergency ordinance goes. And And like I said, this is really pretty reasonable fines, and we just wanted to be able to have another tool that we could deal with this, because unfortunately we may be operating in this environment for longer than we normally are, frankly. So happy to answer any questions on the ordinance.
Questions for Carl?
I
Okay.
had a question, Jonathan.
Yeah, go ahead, Tony.
Carl, did the emergency ordinance specifically, were you open to changing these days or weekends or what Matt wants now?
Yeah, no, and it doesn't actually, the emergency ordinance doesn't address that at all. So in section 080040060, it allows for the imposition of watering restrictions and penalties for wasting water. And right now that section simply says that it's subject to the general penalty provision of the code. So this has nothing to do with that that sort of operational decision, which tends to need to happen faster than adopting ordinances. This is just, if you violate that order on water restrictions, what's the penalty associated with it?
I understand, thanks. I just thought, okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Carl or Matt in relation to this ordinance? All right, then I guess I'll look for a motion. Or I'm sorry, it's an ordinance. Do I need to open this to public comment?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody from the public like to comment on this emergency ordinance? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back for a motion. Shelley.
I have one question on point of order. This was down on, I think, item number 18, or did we move it up on a subsequent agenda? But on my agenda, it's, so are we addressing this right now? I assume.
Yeah, I think the mayor tried to move it
Sorry.
up because he wanted to make our discussion.
Did we move it? Okay. I
I
will move that we adopt ordinance number 22. An emergency ordinance of the City Council of City of Glenwood Springs, amending section 080-040-060 of the municipal code to authorize the issuance of graduated penalty assessment fines for violations of any rule, regulation, or order rationing or limiting water use during a water shortage.
Second.
Yeah, I think Paula snuck in there. So motion by Shelley, seconded by Paula. Yeah, and I just want to apologize. I think this is all an infrastructure talk, and it got rolled in. So I don't think there was a formal vote or acknowledgement to move it up. So I apologize. But if everybody's okay with that, any further discussion? Catherine, could you call the question?
Deb,
Yes.
Hershey,
Yes.
Godus,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Voorhees,
Yes.
Willman.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
thank you guys. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. I think there's also, we're still under the title, I think, of infrastructure. So, Matt, your hand's up. Go ahead.
So sorry if I missed any conversation there. If you asked me any questions, I just got a call from the incident command team that No Name is running black right now. So we're going to run out and try to get some water samples out of it just to see what it is. It's probably just ash at this point, but these will be the fun things that we're going to deal with for a while.
Oh, I thought when you said black, I thought that meant incident command has totally contained it and drew the line black, not
the black line. This is a black river right now coming
That's
down.
not good. No, sorry.
So it is raining in the upper basins of No Name and Grizzly right now, or it just came over a little while ago. So it takes a little while for it to make it to the point where they're comfortable. And they're actually removing the CDOT staff that's out there right now, just in case there's a debris flow. So, well, the fun of that, let's move on to infrastructure, because that's even more fun, right?
Tony, you ready?
You guys ready? I was going to kind of go through this just so some of the things, I know you've read them all, but I don't think that everybody in the public has kind of read these things. You know, the city of Glenwood Springs, I think Carl brought it up really well, you know, basically was incorporated in 1885. You know, the reason we have a water system that we do is basically it was there to help generate electricity. So, you know, that was put in the late 1800s. The Grizzly Creek Tunnel was created in the early 1900s, which really is the backbone of why we have such a great water system. I know it doesn't seem great right now, but there's ways to fix it. We'll make it happen. But we have a spectacular water system. So, but that being said is we have a water system that is that old. You know, this city started with electricity prior to, I think, New York. You know, we've had this water system in place for quite a long time. There's been a lot of updates done to it. The pipes that are above grade in No Name and in Grizzly Creek right now used to be tin aqueducts sitting on wood channels that brought everything to tunnels. So, you know, the system has been upgraded as much as humanly possible up to this point. So, you know, I don't think people really know that this little town of ours of 10,000 people really isn't a town of 10,000 people. Our systems, our electric system, our roadway systems, our water, our sewer, everything that we have is, interestingly enough, basically it is here to sustain a town of about 13,000 people on average. The tourism board says that the city of Glenwood Springs sees 1.2 million people a year in the city that are not residents, and not just the people that are passing through. These are tourists that they're kind of keeping track of. So on average, that's another 3,300 people a day. On Strawberry Days weekend, I have no idea how many people are here. Lisa Langer, I wish she was here. She probably knows. It's probably 20, 30, 40,000 people in this city. So we don't run a city of infrastructure for 10,000 people. We run a city of infrastructure like Aspen does, like Vail does, for tourists also. And they impact what we do every single day, whether it's our roads or how big our pipes have to be to supply hotels or pools or whatever it is, how much electricity we have. Thank you, Steve Beckley. I love when you run the tram, you know, but it costs money to keep the infrastructure up. We have 10,000 people. At the end of this year, we'll have 4 substations. That is amazing to me, but that's what we need to keep the infrastructure going. If you want to, I love this little thing that I kind of put together, to be honest with you. The little city infrastructure fact sheet. You know, I'll just go through some of the ones that make me the most giddy, I guess. You know, we have 56 miles of sewer pipe. We don't have that many roads, but we have 56 miles of sewer pipe. You know, there is 75 miles of water line in this city that keeps everything going. So when we decide to add to the city, add a development, incorporate somebody, whatever it is, annex somebody, we have to sit back and have a conversation. Do we have enough water? Yeah, in essence, we do have enough water. Right now, it's a little bit of a challenge, but we have lots of water capabilities. Can the system even hold up to that new infrastructure that's being asked to? What pipes have to be increased? Does the sewer work? You know, so, and I'm sorry if I'm a little long-winded on this, but you could look through the list of things that we have. I mean, we have 9 water tanks. And water tanks, you don't just put them up and forget them. You put them up, you have them maintained, you have them inspected, you have to paint them. Painting a water tank is a $300,000 conversation. It's not go to Lowe's and roll the thing with some paint. There's scuba guys that are involved in that. It's taking part of the system offline. Is your system redundant enough to lose a tank for, say, a week? We have a lot of challenges, which is why next year we're going to build another tank out at the Cardiff location. There's a 500,000 gallon tank out there. We're going to build another one. We struggle in the south side to try to keep water down there. If we had more capacity in the wintertime, we could catch up and stay ahead of it for the summertime. So we'll build probably another tank in the next 2-3 years up by the Highlands tank, because by the end of the day, when people have watered, that tank has no water in it for fire flow. And that's pretty bad, because the fire we currently have, if it was going to hop, it would affect the Oasis tank and the Highlands tank. And we don't have a huge amount of capacity over there. So roadway system, yeah, we've got 43 center line miles. Everybody kind of thinks that's the end of it, but that's not really. It's 86 lane miles or 113 miles of actual asphalt, because parking, nobody ever counts parking areas. I'm like, I still have to maintain and use those parking areas. We have over 10,000 street signs in town. You know, there's 15 miles of overhead power lines, 45 miles of underground power lines, 1,500 transformers in the city. Some of them are 40 years old, and we're getting out there and we're replacing transformers and poles. And it's no surprise to anybody, but you know, this city is a full-time job for every single one of my staff. It's not, they're not standing around doing nothing during the day. They are working their butts off, trying to keep the city maintained and upgrade the city every single day. Do we have enough money to do all of this? No, we don't. You know, the electric department, they can kind of control how much money they have because they set rates. Our current rate is really fairly reasonable when you look at it compared to the remainder of the state. We are doing a rate study right now to see if we should be bumping that rate or if it's good or not. And we'll finish that up before the end of the year and bring it to council. Water and sewer, we are doing a rate study also, because do we have enough money? No. You know, the list that we have of capital improvement projects that we put in front of our rate study consultants, he basically passed out. It's not a pretty list. It's an ever evolving list. It is a list of things for not just in making upgrades to this pipe or that pipe, or this lift station was built in 1970, so I need to upgrade it. It's the redundancy list. And that's exactly what we're talking about right now with water is redundancy. You know, how do we make it so that if something did happen to Grizzly Creek, and I know people are like, you guys aren't planning this, but we've already had many, many conversations about how to make our water system more robust. We just haven't got there yet, and this happened. So we are planning those things. We will be moving towards new things, but it still takes time and it takes money. And we don't have a whole lot of time in some of these things that we're now going to do. And we don't have a whole pile of money to make everything happen. You know, I think at the end of this year, our reserves in water will be somewhere around the $4 million. And we have $3.8 million in improvement fee or system improvement fees. And we'll be spending some of the system improvement fees on these things that we're going to be doing here pretty rapidly. Hopefully we get some grant money. Hopefully we can get some federal money. We get some state money to help pay for those things, but we'll have to move forward with some of these projects just so that we're ready to go for whatever is thrown at us with these two burn areas. You know, the PASER analysis, you guys have all seen that. We're going to do a new PCI analysis of the roadways this year, but the PASER analysis that Terry had done 3.5 years ago, you know, basically said 40% of our roads are failing. You know, they're not bad. They're not in decline. You know, it's failing. That's 40% of 43 miles. You know, that's 16 miles of roads. And if you think about the cost of a road, that's a lot of money. And that's only ones that are failing. There's ones that are in decline. And there's ones that are, you know, kind of at the point of probably non-repair. And they're just moving that direction a little bit faster as we don't repair them or don't have the money to. I made a little list at the bottom of the main issues we see with the city currently. We've got storm culverts we need to pull out because they no longer have bottoms to them anymore. They literally have just rusted away. They've been there for so long, or they've scoured out. We have storm sewer systems. We have 2 of them that we're going to work on next year that some of the inlets don't actually attach to anything. They go to a pipe that goes to the ground that got cut off however many decades ago that no longer hooks to anything. So we're going to work on storm sewer systems, the lack of regional water quality facilities. Terry can talk to you all about that. That'll be a fun thing. Once the census is done, if we go over 10,000 people, all of a sudden we'll be an MS4 permitted city, which will mean we have to meet water quality standards, and we'll have to hire somebody to probably be in charge of the storm sewer system and what the water qualities are. So every day, I guess my point is, and we could start answering questions and talking about it more, but every day is just a day farther behind we are. You know, I found it really funny, you know, when the 2005, when the last street tax went through, Larry Thompson spent a boatload of time, and I talked to him about it, putting together a streets list of which streets to fix. 2006, we got the tax. 2008, everything went downhill. But the list that Larry put together and the dollar amount that he put toward it, if you increase that dollar amount 5% for every year to the last time we had the street tax discussion, what, a year and a half ago, whatever it was almost exactly dollar amount that I had put together at that time. So streets don't change. They don't get better without fixing them. And I can almost guarantee you that costs go up 5% every single year. And I can tell you that right now because Larry and I are on the same page with everything that we kind of put together. So, you know, it's a losing battle with the current funding that we have. And I know nobody wants to hear that. But with even the current street tax that we have, it has to be used in so many places and to do so many things that it's just not enough money to actually gain on the problem. You throw $1 million at streets every year, you're basically just holding the playing ground. You're not making improvements because whatever you've improved, you haven't maintained something that's already 10 years old. And when it becomes 15 years old and you don't have the money to go back to it, it becomes the problem then. So it's a continuous cycle of fixing something, but ignoring something else because you don't have the money to do both of the things at the same time. And you're kind of limping one along while you're trying to fix something else. So it just becomes a cyclical cycle of expenses. And every year that that expense sits there is a 5% increase. I'd love to say that COVID made things cheaper. I don't think that's true. I don't think this valley's ever been busier with construction. You know, there's all kinds of fun things going on in this valley, but you know, I don't know how far into a conversation you want to go. We can spend hours and hours and hours in this, and I can go road by road, you know, what's wrong and why we're doing things. But the main focus right now, and you guys know this, is trying to fix infrastructure, especially roadway, sidewalk, curb and gutter, storm sewer infrastructure that's adjacent to a failing water or sewer system. That's why we're doing all of Cedar Crest right now. You know, the water lines at the top of Cedar Crest were 4-inch lines. They were hooked to fire hydrants and they could never even flow the water if they wanted to actually fight a fire. Now we have a fire adjacent to us. I hope people understand why we're doing it this way and saying, if there's a fire in town at the top of Cedar Crest on Rock Ledge, I want to put that house out immediately so it doesn't spread directly up a hillside and cause a bigger issue. You know, so, but if the fire water is not available in that particular location, then how do you control a fire that could spread onto a hillside? People are wondering why I'm kind of moving and looking at Red Mountain South. If you've ever been to Red Mountain South, which is the Walls, 13th Street, 11th Street kind of area, Riverview kind of area, the roads look like a war zone. All of the water lines are thin wall pipe. And if any of those failed during a house fire, like last year, you know, there's a very large hillside right adjacent to that also that it could have spread to very, very quickly. So, you know, we're looking at safety, then kind of ADPs, and then kind of how much money can we throw at it? Like, we won't be able to do all of Red Mountain South next year. We've budgeted for it. We'll do phase 1 of it. We'll probably never be able to do a Cedar Crest again because that was $4 million all at one time. We ate up street tax reserves. We ate into some of the water system reserves to try to make that happen because we felt that strongly about getting that done. And with the fire we have right now, I feel even more strongly about have done that and made that system improvement over there. So like I said, I don't know how far into this conversation you guys want to go, but we own a lot of things. We do the best we can to maintain all of those things. But we are not in a super great financial system, and a lot of municipalities can say this, to make all of the improvements probably at the pace we need to catch back up with where we need to be. Nor do we have the staff. Some of them are listening to this conversation right now. I'm basically killing some of my staff at this point just to try to keep up with what we need to do. And then you add a fire on top of it that takes a whole boatload of staff time. You know, everybody's working as hard as they possibly can to make this system run for all of the residents. And I hope they appreciate it. I know they don't know it, but I hope they appreciate it. There's a lot of hands up.
I was about to say that. Deborah.
I just wanted to echo everything Matt said, but especially about staff working as hard as they can. But I also want to point out that we are not the only city in the United States that is facing this. You know, I think there have to be long conversations about how we get resources to do this because we have to. But also, you know, I want you guys not to feel like we haven't done things. We have replaced what was the worst bridge in the state of Colorado. We are working on South Midland. Matt has only been the public works director for just a little over a year. Thank you, Matt. And he has done tremendous work and he has a tremendous staff. So I don't want you guys to get so overwhelmed that we can't make progress, because we are making progress. We just need more resources and more time, and for you guys to fully understand the extent of the problem, but not to get so overwhelmed by it that we get stuck.
Thanks, Deborah. Rick.
You muted, Rick.
You muted me, Godus, or maybe it was you, Matt. I'm not sure.
It wasn't me.
You know, we really are at a crossroads. When we had our vote 18 months ago, or however long, it seems like 18 years ago, we had two candidates for the council who said that the city was basically not telling the truth about all of the needs that were out there and that there was money to do all of this work. And, you know, we're at a fairly serious point once again here where I'm delighted to have this conversation and to bring it up before we get too far down the road in terms of dipping into reserves, because that's not sustainable. Water reserves, street reserves, electric reserves, all of that's there for a reason. And I think that having a conversation that really is fact-based and not just simply shouting slogans out about, you know, the people or the people of taxes and the government will spend whatever it gets. You know, if this city and this council hasn't earned the trust of people throughout the town with the kind of work that we've done, then we have a different issue to talk about. You know, we just really need to be advocates for fixing the infrastructure. There's nothing sexy about it. There's nothing cool about it. But when a house burns down because you don't have a fire hydrant pressure, or, you know, you basically lose whole sections of town to brownouts that are intermittent, you know, the basic function of government is to provide these services. And so I would just simply say we can't have, you know, national politics dictate what we need to be doing for the citizens of Glenwood Springs. And I don't think that they're necessarily all well educated about it. I think we do need to have a PR campaign, and I think that we need to really educate people about these choices because they're stark. And Deborah's right. It is not just a Glenwood Springs problem. Everybody kicks this stuff down the road because, frankly, some people make a political career out of, you know, blaming the government for everything that goes wrong. And I think we're better than that. And I would like to see us get away from slogans and really get into it and lay out some potential revenue sources that we can use to keep the town going. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Matt, you had a hand up for a sec. Did you want to comment?
I'll wait.
Okay. Paula, then Charlie.
The street tax didn't pass. Let's move forward. So Deborah, I have a couple questions for you. Is there other municipalities that add a fee, not a lodging tax, but some kind of municipal fee to lodgers? If we have this many lodgers coming into our area and our average population is 14,000, not 10,000 per day, Is that something that we could look at? And can you check with other municipalities if there's something along that line that's available? I know that puts a burden on our lodging as far as having to add that extra fee. I don't want to make it a tax, but is it a way that we could accommodate possibly just for water? You know, this helps us in our water infrastructure. That's my first question. My second one is, can we readdress paid parking to help us with the street funding? Is that a possibility to say, here's another source of income? And the third one is, the street tax did fail last time. Is it time to kind of consider a reappeal and replace the street tax that we currently have, since that's coming up for expiration anyways? Is this a time right now to address, okay, let's come back at a half cent, you know, increasing that by a half cent or something like that? What do we do moving forward? I've learned a lot in the last year and a half. And I just want to go, okay, what do we do moving forward? Not let's look at what happened a year and a half ago, but how do we make some changes now to really kind of address some of these problems that we have and try to think outside the box on addressing that? And we as council people should be looking at alternatives to funding and that type of stuff. So Deborah, if you could answer a couple of those questions on possible fees.
You know, can I interject? I think it's putting Deborah in a tough spot. I think it's a political question. It's not a, and Deborah, if I'm wrong, you can tell me I'm wrong, but I think it's more of a political question.
My
I'm
question
happy to talk about it, but
it wasn't a political question. It was, do other municipalities add those kind of fees? That's what I'm asking.
oh, okay, that question.
Trying to
Sorry. Okay.
I just, for lodging tax, I believe communities across the nation do all sorts of different things with their lodging tax. There's no one right way to do it. If that is something council is interested in, we can of course bring that back. But yeah, all different just depending on where you are. Parking, you know, of course, if you guys want to talk about paid parking, then those funds could be used however they want to. As far as, you know, a tax question, I am more comfortable if council drives those discussions, right? Like if you tell us you want to discuss them, we will discuss them, work with you. But I mean, I think that really should come from council. Carl, you can correct me on any of that.
And let me just jump in real quick, Paula. You know, we already have a lodging tax, and right now the lodging tax, as you're probably aware of, does go to our marketing. And I think we spend about $1 million a year promoting the community. Our lodging taxes with our sales tax on top of that, help me out somebody, but I think it's like 10.5%. No, I'm sorry, 12%. There's a 2.5%.
I understand all of that. I'm just looking for some other alternatives and what other municipalities might be doing to address some of these things, especially when we look at, we don't have a town of 10,000, we have a town of 14,000. And what are the possibilities there? That's what I'm asking.
Go ahead, Carl. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, I think Deborah summed it up pretty well. I mean, that, you know, Colorado generally as a state has focused on sales tax as a revenue stream at the municipal level versus, say, property taxes, which if you're in, I don't know, in Oregon or an East Coast or things like that, you will see a more heavy reliance on property tax rates. Part of that reason in Colorado, obviously, is the Gallagher Amendment and the impacts that has, just because it's that differential impact on communities like ours is fairly large. So I think realistically, you know, some of those things can help, but probably, you know, even a parking program here in Glenwood isn't going to generate the kind of revenue that Matt's talking about. It certainly would help chip away at it. And obviously how your lodging tax is spent is a decision that city council can make. You know, Tabor requires that you ask the question on raising taxes. It does not require you ask the question on allocation or re-ask the question on allocation. I'm not suggesting that's what you should do, but that is certainly an option you have.
And can you do something, Carl, as a fee as opposed to a tax to a lodging?
As long as it's a true fee and not a tax hiding as a fee, absolutely. And so typically what that means is you can't do it as, say, a percentage of something, right? Like that's where you get into really, it starts to feel like a tax, is that it's based on a percentage of something. Certainly you can, for specific areas, and it's something that we've talked about over the years, implement kind of a special improvement district inside of the city where you assess property owners based on typically on the frontage they have on a roadway. And that is one mechanism that you can use to try to offset some of the costs or all of the costs of particular projects. So that is, there are those tools out there as well. But they're really pretty focused on the properties that are adjacent to the improvement work that you're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Charlie and then Tony.
So in 2018, in summer 2018, the Financial Advisory Board began looking at various funding sources to try to figure out how to start to meet some of these needs. The decisions were made at that time that to promote the fire tax increase for the fire department and the rural fire department, because that was an immediate need. Thank gosh we did that, because look at what's going on and what a great job our fire department has done. Then we began looking at the street tax. I'm not trying to revisit, I'm just trying to give history, Paula and others, and kind of where we've been. Earlier this year, about this time last year, maybe it was a little bit later in October, we began to look at what other funding sources are available. We had the ad hoc committee with the tourism group and the DDA because of the issues of the downtown funding mechanisms. And we began to work toward that. That all came to a screeching halt on March 15th or thereabouts when the COVID crisis hit, and the idea of taking a tax issue of any kind, a revenue increase of any kind to the voters in this election was considered to be politically not feasible. And I agree, you can't take this when these people are already suffering like they are. We need to engage in a long-term program, and I think the Financial Advisory Board will focus on that as soon as they can. We need to look at the long-term various options, Paula, whether it's a fee or whether it's a increase the lodging tax, whether it's a business improvement district, whether it's a attractions tax or a recreation tax, or various things that have been discussed. Each of those things has to be carefully thought out, because as we learned in the 2019 election, if it's not well conceived, and I should say not well conceived, if you can't present the story to the people so they fully understand how funding works in the city, it's very difficult. It looks like the city, when you see we had this budget meeting today, we have all these funds, but the reality is those funds are not, it can't be moved easily, it can't be moved in some cases at all from fund to fund. We can't use the water revenues to fix the streets. We can use the water revenues to fix the water infrastructure. Those are the issues we have to address. And I think we as a council are going to have to begin, as soon as we get through the budget process, begin looking at those things. And I certainly would encourage us to do that. As Deborah said, I think it's really something we got to continue to keep in mind and make sure that our citizens understand. We're really making a lot of progress with limited funds. Cedar Crest, and the job that Matt and the city staff have done there is phenomenal. Matt's already looking at what he can do next year with more limited funds, even which might be more limited than we thought because of the sales tax loss. But we really need to begin looking at those things. These are not easy questions. They're not easy answers. There are long-term solutions, but we have to approach them in a reasonable, rational way so that the citizens of Glenwood Springs also understand this is important, not just this is not a city issue. This is an issue, as Matt says, for serving the 30,000 population we have during the summer, or whatever the number is, Matt. I apologize, I don't remember exact numbers that we have on a day when the tourist season is in full swing. So it's a very difficult thing, and I hope that we all understand that and we're willing to move forward together to try to find some good positive ways of getting there. My soapbox.
Thank you, Charlie. Tony.
Charlie, when I lose a jury trial, I move on. What happened in the spring of
Tony, would you mind turning your video on?
Sorry. Oh, on.
Thanks. No, that's better.
It went off when I turned my mic on. Sorry, Jonathan Godis.
It's okay, Tony Hershey.
When I lose a jury trial, Charlie, I move on. You know, what happened in the spring of 2019. I mean, as a citizen of Glenwood, I get kind of insulted when a member of this council tells me that the people don't understand and we have to have an education thing. They understand exactly what's going on. I think for the most part, they prefer to be left alone, to tell you the truth, by this council, but they understand the seriousness of all these issues, but they vote and they make decisions. It was a very smart campaign. Mr. Godis was very articulate on one side with Ms. Trauger and other people, and the other side. So I, like Paula said, that's the past. But something big happened between March and April of 2019 and June of 2019, and then now. And we had, as Charlie mentions, a COVID crisis. And now we have something which I think is as big an economic threat to Glenwood Springs, which is I-70 and the continual closure of that highway. And after this fire is gone, the rock slides and other infrastructure issues that are going to happen. And, you know, all of these things are a great concern, but we get to pay to make the hard decisions. You know, if I have an economic problem, I don't say, well, gee, I want to raise and give me another $100,000 because I can't afford all these things I want. No, I have to make cuts and make other choices. And it's not this council. I'm not blaming anyone here because it was prior councils and it was probably not on purpose. And I'm not blaming even Shelley, who was probably there a long time ago, that they made some poor choices. And they said, well, like Deborah said, a lot of cities do this. Oh, well, that'll wait. Let's do this. Let's grab the shiny object. Let's do this at 6th Street. Let's build this thing at 7th Street. It's prettier. It's nicer. We don't want to do, you know, nobody gets a street named after them. But now with what's going on, we really have to address these infrastructure issues. And when I talk street tax, and when Matt says street tax and like fix the streets and give $2.5 million for the streets, it's not just the street. It's the sidewalk, like Matt said, it's the pipes underneath, it's the electrical, it's broadband, it's all the other things that go along when you tear up a street and fix it so that we don't have water main breaks like we've had, so we don't have interruptions in electricity and water, and transformers and electrical poles that have to be replaced. It's everything. And I think Rick said it best. People want the focus of their city to be police protection, keep the streets safe and clean, make sure that they turn on the water, there's water, and when they come home and they turn on the switch, their lights come on and their TV goes on. That's what people want. Beyond that, I think this city for a long time has tried to do too much. This is a horrible crisis we're going into, but I think one thing, talking to Steve Boyd and Yvette yesterday about the A&I and the budget that we're going to look at next soon in this fall, is that it has focused the attention of every elected official here that this is the main thing that we have to worry about. And everything else is kind of not as important. That being said, I'd just like to add a little thing, and I don't see Terry here, but I would like Deborah and Carl maybe to think about this, and everyone on this council to think about this. We cannot, as a tourist community, always rely on I-70. You know, it was interesting, Tom Jankowski fighting with Pitkin County and Independence Pass. But what if we had issues in the winter and Independence Pass is closed? This is not a tenable situation. And this entire valley and this entire state, and really with federal aid, needs to look at Cottonwood Pass and paving that. And that could be a $30 to $60 million project, and it could be years and years away. But I think we have to start looking at that, because we cannot, I mean, walk downtown, Jonathan, this week I went to lunch, there's nobody there. It's horrific. And as a tourist economy, we can't survive without I-70 and without an infrastructure that works and without, you know, things for our guests. And those are my concerns. So I appreciate us having this conversation. I wish it was under better circumstances, but whatever funding mechanism we end up using, this for everyone here, I'm sorry, this has to be our one and only focus. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Anybody else? I guess I'll just say, you know, what happened. We need to focus on moving forward. I think we can walk and chew gum. We obviously have to do other things in this city besides just infrastructure. We still have to have a human resource department, an IT department. People love the idea of city broadband. That doesn't cost the city anything. It's something that will pay for itself. It's an enterprise fund. So I appreciate the focus, but we've been focused on this. I mean, when we need to focus on moving forward, but very smart people who have put a lot of time and effort, both as volunteers and as city council and staff, have been very focused on this for a number of years. And just because people are talking loudly about it now, and a water main broke 2 months ago, and I-70 is closed, and our water shed is in crisis, doesn't mean that we haven't been talking about this or that hasn't been an issue. Cedar Crest neighborhood, South Midland's going to get done, Red Mountain next year. We are doing things and making progress, and maybe in a way that we hadn't in previous years because of things like the recession and yes, maybe a lack of focus. But I think moving forward, we all have to get serious about solutions. We can't just sit here and talk about how bad it is, how it needs to be our focus. Come to the table with solutions. Tell me what department we need to cut. Tell me where those funds are going to come from. I have had these conversations with the Financial Advisory Board. Paula has, Charlie has. We've all sat there for the last year and a half with the Financial Advisory Board. We have sat in, Steve Boyd is at every single city council meeting. I have yet to see where we're going to generate an extra $5 million a year. So do we not get a rec center anymore? That's $1 million. You know, if that goes away, is the community going to be happy? That takes care of about 20% of the issue. We could probably operate a city just with police, streets, and fire, but I don't know who plows those streets. I don't know who cuts the check to the employees. I don't know who runs the IT so we can communicate with each other. I don't know who pays Carl's salary. So I think the next time, and I'm happy to have this conversation and to be very focused on it, but I'm not willing to put this on any future agenda unless each city council person comes with what department we're going to start cutting. We need to take the hatchet out. Because if not, and I appreciate Paula bringing, Paula, I appreciate the questions. What about this? What about this? What do other cities do? Those are, I guess I take it for granted because those conversations happened for the 2 years prior to you being on council, but we did talk about a lot of those things. I think we deserve to take those conversations and have them all again. And I don't feel begrudged at having those conversations. But I think we need to have those conversations because the community needs to see us have those conversations. And, can we wipe out the Parks and Rec department? And I'm not suggesting, by the way, to anybody that's talking or to listening that I advocate. I, as a recreation major, I used to run a Parks and Rec department. I'm not advocating for that at all. Our citizens love our parks. They love our rec center. But those are the kind of decisions, if you want to call that fluff, and you want to talk about cutting things, then we need to get real serious. And we also need to have a conversation in conjunction with that about what does doubling our lodging tax do? What does having a attraction tax do? What does fees on everything we can have fees on? What does tripling our water rates? What does quadrupling our electric bill? What do those things do, and who does it impact? I can tell you that impacts the poorest people in this community. And I think that would be really, really difficult because there is a lot of people struggling in this community right now to have their electric and water bill doubled and tripled and quadrupled to try to make that. But let's have that conversation, because until we have those conversations about real solutions, we're not going to move this conversation forward. And I for one, am just getting a little frustrated with always having people say we need to do something, but people not bringing to the table actual solutions or proposals. So that's my soapbox. Is there any further conversation from folks we haven't heard from that want to talk about this? Because next time we're going to talk about this, we're going to talk about solutions.
And that's fair, Jonathan. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Moving on to the next agenda item. Find my agenda. We are now at
Mr. Mayor.
I would love to hear a suggestion that we take a 10-minute recess if anybody has that.
I need to get up and walk around for a bit.
Sorry, I was on a roll.
I know. I'm on a roll too, but.
All right. Thank you, Charlie. We'll reconvene here back at 8:36. Okay, we're back. It's 8:36. I think we have everybody back. At least we have their boxes. Tony back, Steve Davis. I don't see Rick at his seat right now. Let's give everybody one more minute.
Those bookcases behind Rick are movable, and he just kind of comes in and out of the bookcases. So there he is.
Like an episode of Scooby-Doo.
Mr. Mayor, can you tell me where we are in the agenda, please? I got lost.
Yeah, we are at, now that's a very good question. We've had some stuff jump around. I believe we're on item number 10, which corresponds very closely with item number 11. So for those of you in the viewing audience, Christian Henney, we are right on time. Okay, let's bring it back to item number 10. This is an item continued from August 6th. It's a resolution of the City of Glenwood Springs calling an election on the November 3rd, 2020, and certifying a ballot issue, setting the ballot title and content for the ballot issue, and providing other matters related to the election. Carl.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 meetings ago, you gave direction to bring back a resolution with a ballot question relative to de-Gallagherizing property tax in the City of Glenwood Springs. And I'm going to describe kind of what that is and then what you have in front of you. As you know, we've had a couple of different presentations on the Gallagher Amendment, and it effectively limits the amount of the percentage of revenue that can come from residential property tax in the state of Colorado. And as a result, as residential home values have increased over time, that forces the assessed valuation percentage down. And so right now it's a little over 7%. There's some thought that if nothing changes either at the state level or the local level, that will drop to about 5.8% and will continue to decline as residential property values increase. Obviously, that has somewhat of a ratcheting effect on revenues in general, because if it can only be 45%, that means that the non-residential, be that energy production or commercial real estate or what have you, it gets set by the percentage that's coming in from residential, right? So we have this kind of limiting factor. And it also means then that when we go out for mill levies, it is a much harder hit. If we increase the mill levy, it's a much harder hit on non-residential property owners and taxable property interests than it is on residential. So over the last couple of years, because this effect is continuing to occur, you've seen a number of taxing entities, special districts. CMC is a great example of a large, their system that is based on property taxes as well as other revenue streams, have undertaken what is being called de-Gallagherization, which is essentially going to the voters and saying, that you're getting voter approval that the revenue levels that you are seeing in 2020, you have the ability to maintain those revenue levels regardless of what happens to the residential rate. So in other words, it essentially means that the mill levy would go up to maintain that revenue limitation right where it is today. That means it's not a Tabor question. It is not asking for a tax increase. It is simply asking for authorization to leave those revenues at the level they are currently. The companion to this is that at the state level, there is a state ballot issue to repeal Gallagher in its entirety. And that one is interesting in that it actually sees a lot of support from areas that you would think would be more conservative, particularly on the Western Slope. Club 20 is supportive of the idea. You have a lot of counties that are supportive of this idea because they are much more reliant on property tax than they are on sales tax for their revenue streams. And so we'll see what happens with that statewide election. So what we brought back to you tonight, Steve Boyd and myself, as well as bond counsel Tom Peltz, worked on the language is actually very specific just to the mill levy that we have in the city for fire and emergency services. And we did that for a couple of reasons. There are two other property taxes in the city. One is for the GID. That's the General Improvement District, which is a smaller subset. It's smaller actually than the DDA boundaries, and it's been in place since 1980-ish. It doesn't really produce a lot of revenue, but it also is primarily related to commercial properties. And so the Gallagher Amendment doesn't have really that big of an impact on its revenue stream because most of the property that is subject to the GID is commercial. So the Gallagher doesn't have that big of a differential impact on it. The other one is the city also has a 2.87 mil general mill levy that just goes into the general fund and is not dedicated to any particular use. It's just in the general fund. That 2.87 mils, I think Steve would have to hop on and give an idea of what that loss in revenue might mean, but it's one of those things that we felt like we could deal with because it's critically important, as we've seen recently, that if we focus on anything, it's the fire and emergency services 6 mils that was just approved a couple of years ago. And so this would maintain those levels, those revenue levels where they are today. I will tell you that on a couple of days ago, I've lost track of days in the COVID world. A couple of days ago, the fire board met and did approve putting their mill levy on the ballot to de-Gallagherize as well. While they did not specifically link that to the city's decision to do the same thing, they definitely would like to see them go as a companion so that to the extent that we provide education about what that means in terms of revenue for the city and the fire district, because obviously you can't go out and campaign for it with city or district dollars, but you can provide educational materials about what this means. It's just a lot easier for them if we can work in conjunction, since the department operates as a single department, both in the district and in the city. So the second page, the first page is a lot of boilerplate about setting the election and all the dates and deadlines and appointing your designated election official, which is Catherine, and running through all of those things. And then this is the actual resolution. The ballot issue is the last page in bold. That's pretty much it. It's just asking to maintain those revenue levels where they are today, regardless, and changes to the percentage of actual valuation used to determine assessed valuation. In other words, if it goes from 7.2 to 5.8, you can adjust the mill so that you maintain the revenue level. You're not increasing it, because if you do, then you go back out for an election on increasing taxes. So it would just leave it revenues stable where they're at today. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions on the revenue side. Steve is a much better person to speak to that.
Charlie, and then Shelley.
Yeah, I don't have any questions. If you, may I make a motion?
No, I believe we need to take public comment, don't we?
It's actually a resolution. You don't actually have to take public comment, but you certainly can if you would like to.
But yeah, if you, let's do questions right now, Charlie, if that's okay with you. Go ahead, Shelley, do you have a question?
I do have a question. Mainly, it's on the wording. First of all, in the third line from the bottom, I think there's an extra "the," just as an edit, as a
used to determine assessed valuation. So
that "the" to "the."
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah.
Okay. And then the other thing is
7 times and missed that, but we'll fix it.
This, Gallagher is so confusing to people, but I think at this point, it seems that a lot of people have heard of Gallagher and that it's probably not a good thing for things like libraries or CMC or the city, Is there any way we can have the term Gallagher or de-Gallagher in this? Would that be an advantage? Because when I've probably read this 4 or 5 times and it's just difficult to understand.
Right. The actual thing we're asking is what's in the question.
Okay,
and
right.
therein lies the problem, because if I throw in Gallagherize or de-Gallagherize, my concern is that I mean, I need to be very specific about the ask of the voters for what you're being allowed to do. Now, in the material describing it, I think that's fair to include that in how we talk about it and what it is. But that ballot language, I don't remember any that I've looked at that actually use the term de-Gallagherize in them.
Okay, so does this mean that the actual dollar revenue cannot go up over time with inflation or with housing rate, with housing prices?
With inflation,
or is
but
it setting a minimum floor?
it's setting the minimum floor,
okay.
that it doesn't go below.
Right.
You can't just say, oh, we want more revenues this year and raise it without going back out to the electorate. But if those values increase naturally, then that happens.
It would go proportional.
It would go proportionally up, right?
Okay,
so that's a really good point. In the way I described it, I wasn't clear that it creates a floor of revenue. It guarantees that minimum revenue. It doesn't necessarily, if property values go up or tax property interests go up, it doesn't mean you can't, that doesn't come in, because you're obviously, to use another term of art, you're de-Bruced in both of those funds. So you can't gain those extra revenues.
Right, so you can at least keep pace with inflation, kind of thing.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And I have some questions too, but I think, Shelley, to your point, I think the blue book, the descriptor, is going to be an important time to have proponents be able to describe that. And I think also we'll be looking at our paper to cover this and educate the voters as well. So Charlie and Ike, who's ever going to write this article, it's knock yourself out. It's complicated. Carl, so from my understanding, a couple questions. The Gallagher amendment, because of the percentage, really puts the burden on commercial property owners. Is that correct?
It does, in the sense that they are, so that not only, and I think Tony pointed this out at the last meeting, it's not only commercial property owners, it's other taxable property interests make up the other 55% of revenues. What that does mean typically is you will see the commercial property tax rate is about 4 times what it is for residential.
Yeah, it seems really anti-business to me. So Carl, if this doesn't pass, how much money do we stand to lose approximately?
That is a Steve Boyd question.
Yeah, I'm here, I'm listening. I can't turn my camera on because I'm on a different system now, but I think the simplest answer I can give you for that is about $125,000 to the city. And if we don't de-Gallagherize for the fire district, we're talking about something like $80,000. We're still getting valuations in, so we don't really know for sure, but those are rough numbers for you.
So total over 200K?
About 200, I would say, yeah.
Okay.
That's kind of ballpark.
And Carl, I believe you said it, but any tax increase has to go to a vote. So if the citizens do vote for this, their taxes are not going to be going up at all. Is that correct?
Right. It's creating a revenue floor, as Shelley was describing it. If their assessed valuation goes up, obviously not the percentage of assessed value, but if their home value goes up or their business value goes up, they're going to pay more because it's worth more, but not as a result of this action.
And so with taxes not going up on anybody, Steve Boyd, what department would bear the brunt of this $200,000 cut primarily?
Well, it essentially all goes into our general fund. A little bit of it will go into our fire equipment replacement fund, but our fire fund and our general fund are basically the same thing. So the vast majority of it is going to hit our general fund.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but I think, Steve, what we need to be really clear on is that this is a dedicated revenue stream for fire and emergency services. And while from an accounting perspective, Steve thinks of it as the general fund, I want to be really careful of not describing that it's not unallocated funds that can be used for anything. This is a revenue stream. This is 6 mills that are dedicated to fire and EMS. And so from Steve's perspective, he tries to backfill all of that in the general fund that gets cut, but this is a dedicated revenue stream for those purposes.
Yeah, no, Carl's absolutely right. And, he's right. I look at it as kind of overall, impact to the city, and what happens to the fire department happens to the general fund. But yeah, that's a good distinction. Thank you, Carl.
So basically, a vote against this tonight is basically a vote to cut our firefighters to the tune of basically 200,000 and not actually have any tax relief or tax increase at all. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that is I mean, I don't know what I can tell you the effect of if this is on the ballot and fails, that the effect will be it will have a direct impact on fire and emergency services. I can't tell you what will happen if it gets, if it doesn't go on the ballot and it isn't passed, that's the effect. I don't know what the effect of not voting for it tonight is, other than it doesn't get on the ballot.
And I guess, Deborah, from our operations standpoint, are we able to easily cut $200,000 of fat in our fire department in these times?
I would say the budget presented to you in this work session was conservative and assumed this money would not be in the budget, right? That being said, and I don't want to say this the wrong way, they're our fire department. So it's not like it's a subsidy, but $200,000 are 2 positions, right? So if the fire department has $200,000 less, it does put a strain on the fire department. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thanks. Paul, go ahead.
I have more of a Steve question. Steve, the Front Range makes up for the loss of Gallagher because of such huge developmental growth on the residential side. Is it going to help us that we've recently approved in the last year and a half about 500 new apartment units? Is that residential or is that business, considered business as far as the Gallagher amendment?
No, I think those are considered residential, Paula.
Okay. You think that'll make a difference in our budget?
I don't think it'll make a huge difference in our budget. It will make some. I think that's true. I just want everybody to know that it doesn't necessarily mean cuts directly to fire. We backfill our fire department with our general fund. So we really need to think about all those things together.
Okay, thanks.
And if we do backfund our fire department with general fund, how's our general fund sales tax collection looking for 2021 right now, anticipated?
I'm sorry, is the question how much general fund tax we're going to get in 2021?
Yeah, do we have 200,000 laying around that's easily applicatable from the general fund back to the fire department?
No, of course not. It will be a hardship. Any revenue that we lose right now is going to be a hardship. There's no question about that. And I don't want to weigh in on the political part of this, but you guys are probably going to take some heat politically for trying to put this on the ballot. And I guess what I'm trying to communicate to you is that we need to look at this as a whole system, the fire department and the general fund together. And we will work together as staff and council to try to figure out how to get it done.
Any other questions for staff? Charlie, I believe you had a motion.
Did you want to take public comment?
Yes, I do. You said we didn't have to, but I will. Anybody from the public like to comment? Okay. I will bring it back for a motion and/or further discussion.
I would move to adopt resolution 2020-26, calling an election on November 3rd, 2020, and certifying a ballot issue, setting the ballot title and content for the ballot issue, and providing other matters relating to the election.
I'll second.
Been moved by Charlie, seconded by Paula. Further discussion? All right, Captain, let's call the question.
Willman,
Yes.
Voorhees,
Yes.
Cout,
Yes.
Godes,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Depp,
Yes.
Hershey.
No.
Okay,
Motion passes.
next item on the agenda is item 11, IGA with Garfield County Clerk to participate in the November general election.
Thank you. I think either Catherine or I can take care of this one. I mean, this is the boilerplate that we do every election that is coordinated with the county clerk. Since you just voted to put something on that ballot, we need this IGA to move forward and have that happen.
I move to approve the IGA agreement.
A second.
Is this something I need public comment on, Carl? Yeah. Okay. Any questions, comments? Catherine, let's call a question.
Hershey,
No.
Depp,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Godes,
Yes.
Cout,
Yes.
Voorhees,
Yes.
Willman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. Item 12, Excel Energy Upgrade Project.
Mayor and Council, this is Gretchen Ricehill, Community Development Department. I have, well, Excel is here tonight. I've got several representatives who are here to give you an update on their line upgrade project through Glenwood Springs. So, Alyssa, I'm going to ask you to promote Kelly Flanagan, Jennifer Chester, Ted Morris, and Jay Braley. They're representing Excel. Kelly, once you get promoted, I'm gonna turn the screen over to you so you can provide your PowerPoint presentation.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
You're a little echoey.
Excellent. Darn it. Let's see if I can move some things out of the way. How is that?
Much better.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Gretchen. Thank you, Deborah, and everyone for allowing us to participate tonight. It's been an action-packed meeting, and I feel like maybe stars are aligning that we can come and talk with you on infrastructure night. So I will do that. I also would like to share my screen, but before I do, I wanted to really just mention the fact that I think I'd be remiss not to mention the Grizzly Creek fire and the impact that it's having on the community and certainly on us as well. And say a great amount of gratitude and thank you to all the first responders that are out there on your end, on our end, and on the Forest Service end. It's a big job they've got ahead of them. And so I'm very grateful. I'm also happy to answer any questions from you if you have them around our work with that fire. And Mayor, I'd ask if you'd like me to do that now, open up for that, or at the very end of this presentation.
Let's take it at the end of the presentation.
All right, that sounds great. I am going to share my screen with you. Now, here we go. Are you seeing that, a PowerPoint presentation, red screen?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Let me get this onto a present mode. So I am here, as I mentioned, Kelly Flanagan. I'm the Director of Community Relations. We have met before in my previous role as the area manager for Excel Energy for the mountains in the Western Slope. I am joined today backstage here with a couple members of our siting and land rights team, Ted Morris and Braley J, as well as Joshua Peterson, who is our principal transmission engineer, and Jennifer Chester with Tetra Tech, who's helping us with siting and permitting work. And what we want to talk with you about tonight is a proposed rebuild of the Glenwood Springs to Mitchell Creek 69 kV transmission line. This is an end-of-life replacement of this line. It has certainly met that time frame here. And in the rebuild, we look to build this line back at current design standards including the ever important additional steps that we'll take for wildfire mitigation and risk prevention. In order to get this all done, and when it's completed, it helps us ensure that we'll be able to provide clean, safe, reliable, and affordable electric service to the customers that we are privileged to serve in Western Colorado. So these pictures should go a little bit without saying to help demonstrate the need for this project. This transmission line was originally built in the 1940s, with a portion of it rebuilt 20 years later. So the majority has been here since the 60s. It's important for us to come in and replace some of this deteriorating infrastructure, really to allow us to continue our reliable electric service. You can see we've done what we can with what we can when we can, and it really is time now to go in and do this in a more holistic manner. We have spent as a company and a team about a year looking at the right location for this, and we've had a lot of help with your team. You've got a really exceptional staff. And we all together really did look and have lots of discussions, but some of the things that our team looked at was the topography, the geology, the land cover, crossing the highway, going under the river, all of those various challenges associated with this project. We've also looked at access for construction, for ongoing maintenance, for what our technical design requirements look like. We always look at existing development and whenever possible, future development. And we know that construction projects are not without impact. So we look very closely to see how we can work to minimize impact to the community, to the residents, and to local businesses. So we had boots on the ground for a long time, taking photos and really looking and evaluating all of these various pieces. And we've really landed on rebuilding this line in its existing location. This allows us to use the existing corridor as much as possible and really take advantage of the access routes where we can. When Joshua has been designing and engineering this, we've had a lot of things that we need to take into consideration, and I'll touch on a few here. We do these geotechnical investigations so we can determine the placement and design of poles, figure out exactly how deep they need to be and what the foundational structures will look like, what the safest route for construction and ongoing maintenance is. We also have heard repeatedly how important the travertine layer is to the city of Glenwood Springs. And it's really important to us that we can get a good analysis and make sure that that is unimpacted by any of our work. And this geotechnical investigation will help us with that. We are in the process of and have made contact with landowners for property access in order to move forward with this work. As well as getting some better documentation through land surveys for the various easements that we have and that we will need throughout this corridor. So questions that we have, that we know a lot of people ask, is what's existing in this location and also what is planned. And I can't tell you with a definitive place that we know exactly what every single one will look like. As you can see, the height and design is going to depend on a lot of information that we get primarily from that geotechnical analysis. So it'll depend on the easement width, the slope, what the soil looks like, and then the span of the conductors between these poles. But I can tell you today, we have wood brown poles, as you saw from those pictures a few slides ago. And what we're hoping to do is replace those with steel monopoles. This complies with updated design standards. We think it will increase and improve longevity, and it certainly is a little bit more robust in wildfire times. You can see that there's some existing right-of-ways that we look to widen when we can, and the height of the tower or of the poles may change as well. These things will be finalized as we go through and complete that geotech analysis, but you can really see here that there are some variables that we're looking at on all of these fronts in order to really rebuild this to current design standards. My next slide here, you can see it's a schedule with an asterisk, and I think they always go like that, but you can see we started in the summer of 2019 before the universe got so weird, but we're doing a pretty decent job of trying our best to stick on schedule here. We have done this evaluation of locations and routes. We have begun to contact landowners and talk through them and looking at final locations for poles and structures. We have a permit in front of the city right now to help provide the right-of-way access for our contractor to do the geotech work. And as I mentioned, have contacted landowners. We have our pre-application conference scheduled for September 21st. So we're kind of in those three kind of in the middle spots here, relatively on track. Looking for the middle of 2021 to be when we really begin construction in earnest and do vegetation work, as well as removing existing structures in the conductor and then getting back in to replace with new. And hopefully we are able to complete construction, do all of the proper land restoration, test, energize, and get that transmission line running in 2021. So we know and really respect the need for people to have information about this project. And so we have a dedicated website built for it that has frequently asked questions and information fact sheets. We also have a dedicated email and a toll-free telephone number for customers and constituents to call with questions or comments. This is staffed and will be updated periodically and regularly throughout the course of this project. So there's always a place where people can go to get information around it and to ask any questions that they have. It's a lot of information in not a lot of time, but I am very happy to answer any questions you have. And I think in order to do that, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen.
A couple questions. Looks like Tony and then Paula. Go ahead, Tony.
Mr. Mayor, would it be okay to ask a question about the canyon fire that she mentioned at the beginning in Excel?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be a great appropriate time.
Okay, Kelly, thank you so much. We've, people who haven't been in the canyon, like some of council and the mayor, and I've heard some work is doing. Could you just briefly maybe talk about what the status is there? I know you're using helicopters and replacing poles, but what's going on there and what you foresee in the future? Thank you.
Yeah, sure, Councilman. Thank you for the question. We have not been spared in this fire, and we have suffered some damage to our infrastructure. 13 structures have been destroyed. We have been able to replace one all the way to fully already, and have 4 where we have removed the poles and really work on digging the new holes. Some of these do require helicopter access. That's a tricky situation.
We'll give Kelly a minute to have her connection maybe come back online. It'd be great if she had city broadband.
It was just getting interesting, John. I wanted to hear about that. Holes in that station. Maybe Gretchen could help.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are, Kelly.
Oh, there she is.
Oh, you cut off right about.
You said helicopters.
Helicopters.
Oh yeah, helicopters. We are using helicopters when we need to, and we're also using cranes and trucks and just manpower when we need to. The conditions are challenging for our helicopters to fly, so we're coordinating with all of the first responders and the fire team in the ground and on the field.
Thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Tony. Paula.
Kelly, thank you. Thank you to Excel for the quick work you're doing, getting things back in the canyon. I know it's a challenge, and I appreciate that you guys are working so quickly. But my question goes back to your presentation. The height on these new poles, is there any concern as far as, we have a small airport, and is there concern as far as the airport traffic or that type of stuff, at the height of the poles, the height of the wires now, that type of thing?
Sure, that's a great question. But I can tell you that we don't have any impacts with the FAA on the heights with those poles, and everything that we are proposing is fine with your airport.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Shelley.
Hi, Kelly. Thank you.
Hi. You're welcome.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
I have a question again on the height in relation in the area of the tram. It looks like it crosses right under the tram, over the tram. How close do those get? Or is it going underneath, I assume?
Sure. The line is going to go over the tram as it is right now. So it will be very similar to how it is now.
Okay, so it goes over the top right now.
Correct.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. All right. And then I've noticed a lot of the poles will be 15 to 20 feet taller than they are right now. Is that out of necessity to meet code, or is it just more, what drives that?
Sure, that's a good question. And our tower heights and our pole heights do change with voltage requirements with what is built underneath them. And the higher poles is up to our current design standards and provides for the proper right of way and access easements.
Okay.
And right now, we also know that it has some added lightning protection.
Oh, really? Okay. And how are those poles real big around? Are they like the ones, I'm picturing the ones that are above our old, our current art center over there by Yampa Cave.
Yeah, sure. They're about 2 feet in diameter at the bottom. Okay. So yeah, about a 2 feet diameter at the bottom of that pole.
Okay. And what about the vegetation? I read in the presentation that you go through, do you have to clear that whole right of way basically to get in there, or do you remove all the existing vegetation and then how is it revegetated?
Sure. So we do, and as we go out and really get rain and with the field, we'll be able to really determine what kind of vegetation management we're going to have to do. This is a hard conversation, and we know it's a hard conversation. In some cases, we can trim back trees. In some cases, we do need to take trees all the way down. We'll be working with the landowners specifically that'll be impacted to talk with them and work through what that looks like so that we are able to safely get in there and be able to do it, but also to be able to prevent tree fall onto the wires. So it kind of is a case by case, but we do think very carefully around how we work with the community and with the landowners when it comes to trees, particularly. We don't take them all the way if we don't have to.
Okay. Okay.
And I think, and it's hard to talk about because we understand how much people care about and love their trees. So we really do want to look at what is the most common sense approach that we can take when we get into this conversation, and really being able to have our personnel with Xcel Energy meet with those landowners and talk through what that looks like on their property.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Terry, you had a question or comment? Terry Perch.
I do. Hi, Kelly. I'm Terry Parch. I'm the engineer. I was wondering about whether it would be possible to put the line underground. I worked in Western Washington for a long time, and I watched a lot of poles go down with different weather events. And it seems like, for fire and, other just general protection, it might be better to have your facilities underground.
Sure, it's a good question, and Terry, it's an often asked question, and it's a harder answer because in a lot of ways, yes, we can engineer it and it can go underground, but realistically, and with the way that things are funded, it's not cost effective to do that, especially in this terrain and through this duration and everywhere that it needs to go. Colorado ratepayers cannot bear the cost that it would take to be able to underground this line.
Okay. Is it, I guess just for order of magnitude, could you give us an idea of what the additional cost would be?
Sure. So I think a good rule of thumb is to think about maybe if it's going to be $1 million per mile to go overhead, it would be $10 million per mile at least to go underground. So you can really take a good rule of thumb between 10 to 20 times the cost.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And as we talk about it and we have to go under the river, then obviously that increases that cost even more.
Yeah, no, we're familiar with boring as well. Okay, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
We'll just make up the difference. Rick Voorhees. I'm sorry, you know what, Rick, hold on one sec. Matt Langhorst wanted to say something to contribute. I'm sorry, he might have some additional things.
Hey, Kelly.
Hey, Matt, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
Good, thank
I
you.
know you and I have talked about this a whole lot, but part of the reason the poles are going a little bit higher is so that you have the ability to potentially switch this to a 115 kV line in the future. Because I think that's
thank you. Yep.
lost the people a little bit, right? It's a 69 kV line right now, but I think Excel is probably heading towards the 115 range in the future here. Thus, the poles need to be higher because of transmission requirements. So it's not
Matt,
just
thank you.
looking at terrain and topography and things. It's literally a requirement because of the increase in voltage potentially. So just a point.
Excellent, thank you. I'm glad that you chimed in. I did forget to mention that, and that's a good thing.
Thanks, Matt. Sorry about that, Rick.
Oh, no, that's fine. That's fine. Hey, thank you for coming tonight, Kelly. I just would say that Terry asked the bulk of my question, you know, do you consider going underground? But I do have another question, and that is when you cited where these poles are going to go, what were the criteria that you used? But this is sort of my ward and people are going to ask me. So whatever you tell me, I'll pretty much tell them, you know, if I find it is to my advantage, but no, I'm just kidding. I'm just curious about the selection criteria.
Yeah, thank you. And I was going to try to come up with something really creative about what we did in the 40s, except I can't tell you that because I don't have that answer. But I can tell you, you know, that we did spend a long time thinking about where this was going to go and how it was going to go. And really what we're looking to do is to replace a new pole where the current pole is.
Okay.
And so we think that that minimizes the impact as best we can.
Okay. So when you dig the foundations for the poles, are the poles treated with creosote or anything to make them termite ineligible?
Well, they are treated, but they're not wood poles. What we're hoping to have here is a steel pole, galvanized pole that will weather naturally.
Okay, I missed
so
that.
those are going to be some bad termites if they get through there.
Yeah. Okay. So, and will they be sort of painted industrial gray then, or you know, any thought about blending into the hillside?
Sure. We have a few options that we can work with the community on. We usually do a galvanized, which is kind of a weathering steel that gets a little rust looking. That I think makes the most sense because it does weather naturally and blends eventually, usually about, I have seen about a year. Oh, I'm being corrected that it's not galvanized, it's weathering steel. And that's really what we recommend here.
And so the color will be sort of a gray then, probably, I would think, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, Charlie.
Let me see.
Charlie.
So Kelly, actually, I thought that I read something that said the color would be brown. That you dovetailed the black.
Yep, I think I'm being corrected. I'm very glad I have my friends that are sending me proper corrections at the end. And you're right, Charlie, it is brown.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
The question I have goes back to kind of what Shelley's question was about clearing vegetation. You know, I lived up in 4 Mile for a while, and they came in and put a electric or gas or something in, and they had the swath that was 40 feet wide with bulldozers, and this was clear cut and looked like crap afterwards because they got rid of, you could see there was a line. Are we doing something like that? Are we doing something that's more selective? I heard you say more selective, but that would be a concern. I wouldn't want there to be a big swath where you're putting this line.
Yeah, I think think if I'm being perfectly honest, that there are some areas that it will be noticeable that there's a change. We don't want to come in and do a big bulldozer and leave it in a really bad way. We never want to do that. But we do need to make sure that it is safe and that it is up to our standards, and that it continues to be at the level of reliability that our customers expect. We don't intend to just do a full bulldoze in the whole entire right-of-way access easement that we have, but it will be a noticeable change.
And I understand you got to do your work, but I also, I really want you to be conscious that, what it looks like on the side of the hill, we're fighting a mine coming in because of the impacts it has in the visual of that same general area. So I would appreciate anything you can do to minimize the disruption to the vegetation.
Yeah, absolutely. And we understand, and this is really hard and an ongoing conversation we have in communities all over Colorado. So we do our best, and we will do our best.
Paula.
I just know this is going to come up from the citizens, so if you could give me a quick explanation of how the steel poles will not carry voltage from the wires, that would be great. Just that simple. Of course, they're have non-conductive.
Right. Yes. That.
Kelly, you're frozen.
That is a good question.
Hey, Matt, how about you talk about that?
So the wires never actually touch the poles. They have insulators between them. They hang from the mast arms that come out. So the wires never actually touch the poles, just like on a wood pole. The pole is there for structure. It's not actually touching the wire. And for reference for the color of the poles, all of our recent bridges have been weathering steel. So the 27th Street Bridge, the 14th Street Ped Bridge, it's a brown color. It doesn't take but, 3 or 4 weeks for it to start to change color. But yeah, the poles will never touch the wires, and the wires will never touch the poles. There's insulators between them. So when Kelly gets back on, she can tell you that too.
I should have just let you answer it, but yes, it is the insulators that are in there. And I don't know how I got booted out, probably because Matthew could answer this in a much smarter way than I could. It's the universe.
Shelley, last question. I'm going to call this after Shelley's question.
Last question, sorry, but I'd like to go back to the landscape thing once again, because I think Charlie brought up a good idea. But I guess I have a question for you, Kelly, is because the terrain that you're going through is not only steep, but it's also, it's high desert, dry. It left just bare and disturbed, it won't revegetate on its own. 30, 40 years. Do you guys have any budget, or do you have some way to mitigate that? Can we request that as a community, that some revegetation be done? Whatever the best technology on that is to help that revegetate in a shorter time frame.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we do work very carefully to do a restoration of the area whenever we can. And the point is really well taken, that it's going to need a little bit extra because of just what it is, what it looks like, and where it is. And we
Right.
will do that. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's not something we need to formally request in writing, or will that be included in the project?
Just to be clear, I don't think we get any say over any of this at all. I think this is just a presentation from a company that's coming into our community, and I guess we can request anything we want.
Request, and when
Sure.
it's the disturbance, yeah.
Matt, do you want to take that? Okay. Hey, thank you very much, Kelly. Thank you very much, all the folks from Excel. We appreciate the update. It is something that the public is very interested in. And hopefully, if we have any more questions, we know how to get hold of you. And yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're very welcome, Mayor. And the last thing I'd add is that, we want to communicate with the community. And so we will do some sort of an open house. I don't think it'll look like the way that we would prefer, where we could have some snacks and stuff, but we will definitely engage with the community in whatever platform and whatever area we're able to. And so please keep your eyes, and we'll reach out when we have that information. So I really appreciate the time on your agenda this evening, and thank you for your thoughtful questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. Our energy, we are very lucky to not have our energy go down, our electric go down. I know in the Midwest, my mother was out of without electricity for over a week, and we have a really reliable grid here in Colorado. So we appreciate the work you guys do in keeping us up and going, as well as your own local utilities, for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. On to, let's just take a quick temperature check. It's 9:30. We still have a number of items. Carl, Deborah, can you help me prioritize what we have to hit this evening?
I would say we absolutely need to hit the 27th Street Bridge underpass because we need to apply for the grant. You absolutely need to reaffirm the emergency declaration if you guys want to. And what else? I think those are my absolute.
I thought we did the emergency resolution, Mr. Mayor.
No, that's in a work session.
No, and what we're talking about is that in order to start applying for aid relative to the fire, Deborah had to issue an emergency declaration that you need to within 7 days. So
I'm sorry, Deborah and Carl.
No worries. Thank you.
All right, let's just jump right to the 27th Street. Terry, I believe it's Terry Parch. Are you able to talk about that? And we can just do landscaping while we're at it.
Yes, and Jessica's got landscaping, and she'll go right after I do here. I'm going to try and share my screen. Let me know if you can see it. Yikes. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. We had a long discussion earlier about all of the maintenance needs that we have across the city. I would like to say that, we do have some very important capital projects that are not maintenance needs. This is one of them. This has been on the former chief of police's list for a long time. It was one of the first projects he really emphasized with me as being super important for pedestrian safety at the intersection of 27th. So, I realize that we have many, many needs from a maintenance standpoint, but I would say that this is one of our high needs from a pedestrian safety standpoint. So we did hear a little bit about this earlier in the budget discussions. It was in our A&I discussions. We are fortunate to have RAFTA be leading this for us. RAFTA has put a fair amount of money into this already through their own Destination 2040 property tax measure that passed a few years ago. So for those of you who may not remember, or those in the audience, this is a project that we've been working on with RAFTA, and CDOT is also an active partner with the project. It does address an overpass or an underpass at the intersection of 27th Street would operate on the 27th Street side, so the west leg of the intersection, and then also on either the north or the south side of State Highway 82. It does address a number of safety and crash issues that we have around the intersection. CDOT is very aware of some of these high crash rates, and so they are interested in making this project go forward as well. As I mentioned earlier, RAFTA has gathered a number of funding partners already. So RAFTA did allocate $4.2 million in their Destination 2040 funds. CDOT has already awarded a number of grants to this project. So they awarded a TAP grant at $1 million, an MMOF grant at $1.1 million, and there was some money set aside in a past budget that they were willing to allocate towards this project at another $1 million. We have altogether right now we have about $7.4 million allocated to the project, and RAFTA is asking the city to help them look for additional grant sources. We're hoping to through this presentation and in a future application try to apply for DOLA and FMLD funds. So as you guys know, we're working with RAFTA on the MOVE study. The MOVE study is focusing on BRT routes through town, intersection safety, and parking in the downtown area. So some of the highlights of our MOVE study are to improve mobility and accessibility, improve our operational intersection safety, create balanced, safe, and affordable infrastructure, look at our signal prioritization on State Highway 2, look at parking locations, future downtown parking locations for the RAFTA and BRT facilities, as well as for others parking in our downtown. And then coordinate construction impacts between our two projects. So the conceptual study that RAFTA has already completed looked at this intersection, again, looking at the north side for an over or underpass, looking at the south side of State Highway 2 for an over or underpass, and then also looking at the Rio Grande Trail for some pedestrian grade separations. So those are our different options. The option 1 on the north side, they recognize that they would need to take property on that side. Just for orientation, this is Colorado Mountain Express. This is Carpet 1 right here. This is the Roaring Fork School District. There would be a large impact to the Carpet 1 building there, so they eliminated the north side underpass. The south side underpass is still on the table and something that we wanted to review with the council. We'd like the council to help us make a decision between moving forward with a south side underpass or a south side overpass. And I'll have some examples of those for you here in a moment. So this is, RAFTA had a consultant build some, I guess, renderings of what it could look like. RAFTA actually took our brick pattern from the 27th Street project and applied it to this underpass. So as you can imagine, this is probably from an aesthetic standpoint, one of the most expensive options that we could undertake. Again, really what we want the council to evaluate today is whether you want an underpass or an overpass, and not necessarily the aesthetics of the project. I think we can come back to you in the future if you are interested in moving forward with grant funding for this project, and talk to you more about the costs of aesthetics. Again, this RAFTA applied the brick pattern to the underpass. So this would be the side that is on the RAFTA, the BRT facility. So you can see how they would come under and come upstairs and be able to access the platform directly. There is an overpass option. So just for orientation, this is the Carpet Store. This is the RAFTA BRT facility. This is the school district, and this is Colorado Mountain Express. So for the overpass facility, we do have to build stairs and ramps to avoid having another elevator that we would have to maintain. So you can see some of the structures that would be involved in trying to create an overpass stairways, ramps in both the west direction and the north direction. And this is a rendering of what it might look like to have an overpass. And just for reference, we talked about weathering steel earlier. This is RAFTA's rendering version of weathering steel, which we would probably use in this application as well. So these are our next steps. We would really like to hear from the City Council about whether the council would prefer an overpass or an underpass. The Transportation Commission has seen this presentation and voted unanimously that they would prefer an underpass for aesthetic reasons and for other access reasons. We are planning, the continuation of the MOVE study, as well as meetings with the City Council and RAFTA board in July and August. And we are finishing public engagement, I guess, for the MOVE study, actually beginning next week. But for this project, the RFQ for design is actually going out, and we're having our first meeting with the contractors tomorrow, actually. The construction would occur in late 2021 and then into 2022. And with that, I guess I would like to ask the council if you guys have opinions about an over or underpass.
Steve.
Yeah, I would prefer an underpass. Would you like a motion on that?
Sure.
If you can.
So yeah, I'd make a motion to go the underpass route. I think an overpass would be really not very pleasing, that part.
I second your motion.
Been moved by Steve, seconded by Shelley. Further conversation that is different from the motion. Paula and then Rick.
Terry, could you address two things for me? You talked a little bit about the city's going to help with additional grant sources and stuff, but is there any estimate of actual cost to us at this point? And then my other question is, I agree with the underpass, but can you give me a feel for disruption of traffic on coming in or out of Glenwood on Highway 82? And if we did the underpass with that brick, that would make, this is not the prettiest entrance to Glenwood Springs, but I don't want to spend that kind of money.
So just a few points on that. Your first question was about, or I'm sorry, that was your second question about disruption of traffic. An underpass would require, going down to one lane to, excavate this area. And we would be, looking for places that we could try to bypass traffic to. We would probably be rerouting traffic occasionally to CR 154 and trying to get around the project. So significant disruption. Utilities, moving of utilities, perhaps enlarging utilities as we're crossing Interstate Highway 82. All of those things would be significant disruptions. We have talked to them, talked to RAFTA directly with their engineer Nixon about, the overlap between South Midland and this project. And Nick and I have agreed that we'll mesh our contracts together so that this project is secondary to South Midland. So when South Midland is going to disrupt traffic, that this project will not disrupt traffic at the same time. That we will make sure that the contractors coordinate, the traffic impacts that will occur. And I think the bulk of this construction will actually occur in 2022. And I hope that, we will be significantly, we'll be working all the way through 2021 on South Midland and have some, work to do in 2022. But I'm hoping that, the balance of the work will be in different seasons. And you had a first question. I'm sorry, I missed it.
The funding you think the city will actually need to come up with besides helping with grants?
So right now, we've talked to RAFTA about all of our limitations and all of our needs. And really what they're asking for us is a contribution towards trying to secure a Garfield County Federal Mineral Lease District grant in the amount of $300,000, and then $200,000 to go after a DOLA grant, $1 million DOLA grant. So that would be what we would be asking the council to obligate towards this project.
Thank you.
Rick. Rick, you got to unmute yourself, buddy.
You try to do the right thing and, muting yourself, and then here you go. But, that looks like an awful lot of metal. That looks like something maybe Excel would have some extra steel that we could probably use, but look how much space that takes up. I know that this is just a mock-up, but I haven't seen where we've had overpasses where they're a real alternative for people, because they get to the bottom of the stairs and they say, I got to climb up there. Whereas they get to an underpass, there's a good chance that they say, oh, I can walk down that. But my question would be, Terry, is there bicycle sort of access? I know we've got the grooves on the bridge that I occasionally see people bringing their bikes down and then doing the other side to get all the way down to the street level. So would that be contemplated here in some way?
I was just looking at this detail that RAFTA built, and I can see that they've tried to create a ramp that's adjacent to the stairs. And it's not, I would say that it's maybe a little bit inaccurate, but I don't really like the bicycle groove. I don't think it works very well. I guess I would advocate for a ramp of some sort adjacent to the stairs.
Yeah.
I think that that's one of the, I guess, our failings with the pedestrian bridge, the Grand Avenue pedestrian bridge. I wish we had a ramp out there. So I would push for that here. And I do think that from a tunnel, the standpoint of access and easy use, this is something that occurs in a lot of other communities. I think Boulder has a number of these underpasses to serve the college students across Broadway, and they work very well. I think that they're safe, and they can be, interesting and beautiful. I think that it's a good solution to this safety problem.
Barry, I recall the presentation Transportation Commission where you see the bicyclists here, that ramp goes all the way up along and comes out near the, about midway down the RAFTA turnaround within.
I'm looking for that rendering, but I think you're right, Charlie. And it's, from a spatial standpoint, this isn't making sense to me, but I can see it here in this graphic where, the ramp goes, a ways to the north to be able to accommodate that movement.
Thank you, Terry.
Thanks. Any other questions? We have a motion and a second on the table. All right, seeing none. Catherine, let's call the question.
Voorhees.
Rick.
Yes.
Cope.
Yes.
Hershey.
Yes.
Depp.
Yes.
Willman.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Godus.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Deborah.
Jonathan? And Deborah, I apologize. I do need one more thing from the council this evening because, this memo was written over a month ago. If I could, I would ask that the council also give you authorization to sign the resolution of support for the Federal Mineral Lease District for the to authorize $300,000 of city A&I funding to go towards a grant match for the Federal Mineral Lease District.
How much
Deborah, was that what you were trying to get out to?
Yes, I mean, it was in the A&I draft budget that we presented this afternoon.
Yeah.
So it is really, you know, up to council whether you're ready to commit to that.
Essentially, we're being asked essentially to commit this evening approximately $500,000 to leverage a $9 million project.
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Let's do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Terry.
Yes, thanks.
Did we, oh, Jessica, landscaping. Let's not move on quite yet from 27th Street.
I'm going to quit sharing my screen here, Jessica, so you can get on. If I can. Stop share. There we go.
There we go. Everyone hear me okay?
Fantastic, Jessica.
All right. I will try to make this quick and easy. So as most of you know, we cut the landscaping from the prime contractor's contract. This allowed us to close out their contract as well as close out the construction management and our funding with CDOT so that we had a little more flexibility in the administering of the landscaping without carrying over those extra costs. So in the meantime, I worked with Parks to revise some of the plans, make them a little more drought resistant. Lisa was very helpful in changing some of the plant selections to help us with that. And unfortunately, there was a delay in the bid with all the happenings that happened this spring. But we did get it out. We only received one bid from GH Daniels. I think it was quite fair. There were some costs that were wrapped into the original contract with the prime contractor, such as traffic control, bonding, mobilization that we would pay extra for. And Lisa did ask that we add some irrigation into the center of the roundabout. We had already supplied a service out there. We just need a meter and to tie that irrigation in. So obviously, trying to be cognizant of our current situation with our water, we worked with GH Daniels to revise their bid and do some engineering of it and reduce it a little bit. And the way we did that was to delay some of the plantings until spring. Right now, I think I want to consider the situation as it is, depending on what our water situation looks like as we would move towards planting in the fall. The only things that I think we should plant in the fall would be the trees and sod that are adjacent to the HOAs. So next to A&D, next to Berthoud, and next to the Racket Club, we have impacted them quite significantly with this project, and I'd like to get that wrapped up. But obviously, if we're restricted on our water, we aren't going to put that in because it's not going to survive very long. And then come back in the spring, get the remaining landscaping installed. This will help with traffic calming. It'll slow people down. I'm sure you guys have all seen how much that landscaping has improved the 6th Street roundabout and helped at least slightly with the craziness that happens out there. Other than that, if you have any questions.
Shelley.
Thank you, Jessica. I just had a quick question on, it looks like in the bid, we've have $90,000 for compost and $20,000 for mulch. And I thought those were things that the city produces through our land, through South Canyon, the landfill. So is there some reason we can't supply that mulch and that compost and save money?
We could, when I talked to Jody about it, that cost comes from the hauling, the mixing of the compost with the topsoil that they bring in.
Oh, I lost your I can't hear you. Sorry.
So that cost comes from the hauling of the compost in, the mixing of it with the topsoil to get it set on site. And so there's not a huge cost savings there. Obviously, we're going to work with them with that mix to try to optimize it and reduce some of those costs. My topsoil number was pretty large, so we've already that extra topsoil that we don't think is going to be needed. The mulch, I'm not sure that we produce a lot of mulch. I guess Matt might be able to answer that.
I know. Yeah.
We don't produce any mulch. Sometimes we get mulch. We don't actually produce it up there. We kind of grind everything into bigger chunks, not mulch size, and we use that material. And the landfill is still an enterprise fund, so if you did buy a compost, the project would still have to pay for it.
Okay.
$1 a ton.
And that was my other question was, would it be a savings for us? And I just wondered if there was some reason we weren't using our own compost, but sounds like there is.
Yeah, and we did talk about reducing the mulch quantity as well. We did increase it to 6 inches to help with the moisture control of the plant.
Okay.
About it, it's not, reducing just 1/3 cut off of the cost because it doesn't. You get some discounts with bulk. You get, it doesn't really save you as much as you think it would.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Oh.
Jessica, can we talk to local businesses about putting this whole thing off until next spring due to our financial restrictions, due to our water restrictions, due to just the state that we're in at this time in the city of Glenwood?
Like eliminating it altogether or just delaying it till spring?
Delaying it so that we're putting it into the 2021 budget, and when we may have a better financial place, and number two, being in a better situation with the water.
Yeah, so that's pretty much what I'm proposing. The only thing would be that sod and the trees. And again, I would, if we're not in a good situation with our water, we would delay that. I would work with them to delay that until spring as well. It does save us.
If we could move, sorry, I lost you. Yeah, if we could move in that direction, it feels like it's a better place for Glenwood. My other question is, are you addressing, because this is such a big issue, are we addressing the riparian area down at the bottom of the new bridge? Are we
there are no wetlands that were impacted by our project. The setback from the water was, and we have seeded it. It will come in when we get more moisture. We have our erosion control manager out there at least once a month, if not more frequently if there's a storm, and he's confident. You can see where the areas that are more shaded and have been getting water are coming in. It's just we've had such a dry year, it hasn't taken well.
Thank you. Yeah, if we could look at that as a council on whether or not we want to wait, that would be great.
Oh, and the budget thing, Steve might want to answer this, but it's all coming.
Hello, Jessica, you're cutting out.
Sorry. Steve can answer this better, but I think the funds for this come out of A&I. It's not technically a part of the budget. It is, but
I would say it probably comes out of money we've already bonded from
Right.
A&I.
Any other questions? Oh, yes, Charlie. Yeah, sorry about that.
Real quickly, I think Deborah this is part of the money actually was in the original bridge construction costs. We're just putting to a different contractor, isn't that right?
Yeah, with a slight increase.
Okay. I would move to approve the bid for the 27th Street landscaping. Looks like bid 2020-026.
I would second that.
Been moved by Charlie, seconded by Rick. Further discussion? See none. Okay. Sorry, Paula, go ahead.
Sorry, I still think that we should look at our water situation and decide, should we move this off until the spring or into a time that we feel that we're going to be able to take care of what we're going to put in. I don't want to throw money away.
I think that's part of Jessica's proposal.
Yeah, that's my understanding. We're going to do most of it in the spring. The only thing we're going to do this fall is the stuff in the areas that are maintained by the neighboring property owners.
I understand that. I'm just saying, should we just wait on all of it if the property owners are okay with that due to the water restrictions?
Jessica, are the property owners, okay, I asked this question, Paula. I don't think the property owners are okay, and I think we're kind of obligated, but Jessica, correct me if I'm wrong.
So one of the property owners,
Gotta get closer, Jessica.
Solomon's been playing his game, and I think he cut my internet a little bit. Only one of the property owners is having an issue, and I can justify it if we're not going to have water. Obviously, that's an issue. We don't want to plant things that are going to die, and I think at this point, I would like to, if we can, get it in, so we can be appeased at this point. But if we have to delay because of water restrictions, I think that's perfectly acceptable.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Catherine, let's call the question.
Godus,
No.
Davis,
Yes.
Hershey,
No.
Kaup,
Yes.
Willman,
Yes.
Stepp,
No.
Voorhees.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. Let's see. Okay, now I'm not on mute. All right. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate that. Let's jump to the emergency ordinance. Item number 18.
It's actually under Deborah's report.
Oh.
We already did the emergency ordinance. We're talking about the emergency declaration for the fire that she did so that we're in line for funding. You guys need to ratify that within 7 days of her issuing the declaration.
Okay.
Oh, I wasn't the only one confused. Okay.
Yeah, no, you were not.
You guys are, and so yeah.
I guess. Oh yeah, go ahead, Charlie.
I'm going to ratify Deborah's decision on the emergency declaration. Certainly was appropriate and necessary.
Second.
Been moved by Charlie, seconded by Tony. Let's do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. It looks like we only have one item that we didn't get to. We've kind of been jumping around. No, two items. CARES funding. We've continued this a number of times. And then COVID-19 face coverings. I believe the COVID-19 face coverings is just minor tweaks to align with the state. Seems how we don't really have a whole lot of tourists that are probably getting confused right now. I'm okay with kicking that can down the road, another one. Do we need to talk about CARES funding? We haven't talked about it. It's 10 o'clock, but at some point we have to talk about it, right?
You do. I also want you to be in a good state of mind when you're talking about it.
Well, sorry guys to jump in, but from a CARES perspective funding, is it okay if I just apply for reimbursement for the things that are not controversial that I believe that we all believe we should get paid back for? I just want to be able to do that.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Mayor, do think we should put this early on our next agenda. I think we need to deal with that issue, and the face covering, I think, comes up the first meeting in September, so it'll be appropriate to talk about that then.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
And you still have, which you can continue, the adoption of large and small capital project list from the Transportation Commission.
So moved.
Right.
Oh, we probably need a presentation, don't we?
You know, if you want to, you can push it. You know, we have pushed it off for a number of meetings, but you know, it's not critical mass, and it would be nice to actually have a little bit of conversation about it, and everybody's tired. So I think we could probably do it at the next agenda.
Transportation Commission spent a lot of time talking about this. So, and I don't know if anyone from the Transportation Commission is still here, but I think they were going to be present, at least somebody to talk about it. So I think it'd be good to, and I don't think we need to approve it tonight.
Yeah, I agree.
I think the only person from the Transportation Commission still here is Christian Henney, and he'll be here next time.
He's not on the Transportation Commission.
There's a commission that Christian's not on?
Yeah, we wouldn't let him on that one.
Move to put Christian Henry on the Transportation Commission.
Second it.
All in favor?
Congratulations, Christian.
You can tell when we're tired.
All right, I think we're getting a little punch drunk. Let's see. I think we have all our agenda either continued, addressed, or deemed that we're going to hit the next one. Let's see. We did the city manager. City manager, do you have any other anything else to report? No. Okay. Report from our city attorney.
Nothing to add this evening. Thank you.
Okay. But hopefully there's.
Mr.
Go ahead,
Manager,
Charlie. Yes.
One thing, and it's too late to be dealing with it tonight, but you know, after I did the motion to table the riparian thing, it seems to me that we really need to have that discussion, get it done. I know we don't want to have any more meetings, but you know, I think if we could do it an hour and a half, like next Thursday. I hate to push that. I know staff doesn't want to, it needs any more work, but I've been thinking about your just the general concept. We need to get this done, and I'm gathering our September 3rd agenda is going to be real full again. So I just throw that out for what it's worth. I would have to amend my motion, and we'd have to agree to have a special meeting. I see Tony shake his head no, and I understand. Yeah, I know nobody really likes special meetings, but
I'm not available. I'm sorry.
So,
well, we could have it without you.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure you'd enjoy that, Rick, but I'm elected too, so I'm going to be there.
Well, that's fine. If you can't make it, you can't make it. You have duties, Tony, your obligation.
Guys, it's too late in the day.
So let me make a suggestion. We had a vote 2 weeks ago for 20%. Charlie has made some wordsmithing changes that I think that we would like to examine. But I think that if Charlie would be amenable to, I feel like we've been stuck on this first reading for a while now. So if folks are amenable to passing this to the second reading with the changes that Charlie suggested, knowing that we can examine both the changes and the percentage and the actual foot total frontage, then we can at least get past first reading and beyond a second reading and not have to have a special meeting. Carl, you look uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think the problem I have with that, Your Honor, is that the public heard you say you were tabling this till September 3rd. I think to then come back to it later in the agenda, I'm just really not comfortable with, I guess. And I think you guys are going to take heat for no good reason.
Yeah, that's fine. So that would preclude then also a special session?
I don't know that it would preclude a special session, but I just think that to, flip it back in at the end of the agenda is just not a comfortable thing to do.
That's fine. So I guess I would say Monday night, who has availability Monday night to be able to, I would think we could talk for, no more than a half hour on this.
But Mr. Mayor, you told everyone the September date. Now they're gone.
We'll notice it.
I know, but you mean this Monday?
No. That would be my intention, yes.
No. I guess I would caution you again, Mr. Mayor. I would give at least a week, just because there again, it has this kind of odd feel to it. I don't mean to be difficult, but we had the public watch you guys say September 3rd.
only
If you wanted to do it earlier than that, you want to give the public sufficient time to be able to see it, for it to be out in the newspaper. And given that we publish only 3 times a week, you'd be holding the meeting before it would actually make it into a paper.
That's fine. And if we're talking about a week, then we might as well just have it September 3rd.
Right.
Tony can't be there. I don't think that's fair. I know he's got a strong position. I don't think it's fair to hold a meeting if he can't be there. So
Can we commit to at least passing it, do we think, at the first reading at the next meeting? I mean, is that too ambitious right now? But I would say in all sincerity that I don't think we should, I think we as a body should commit to not, and Charlie, I appreciate the work you did on it and the changes you wanted to make on it, but I don't think it's fair to put changes out to this council literally while we're in between work sessions the night of. I think that if we ask staff to have things into our packet the Friday before, I think any cutoff that we have for each other should either be that Monday, at least give us 2 or 3 days. And if not, it does not get submitted to the rest of council. Is that something
that's fine. The reason I did it in writing is if I was going to make it orally, it gets confusing as we learn when. I'm not critical of Tony's motion was, but it's confusing when you're trying to amend an ordinance orally, and but I agree with you. I should not have done it so late.
Right, and I would just say that P&Z and River Commission have put a almost immeasurable amount of time into this and expertise. So to be rewriting the ordinance on the fly, I think we get a draft at hand from our city attorney that talks to the slight edits that we wanted, and let's go from there.
Okay.
Thank you. September 3rd.
I appreciate that feedback, everybody. I'm just trying to get past this one thing. All right. I appreciate it. Everybody, anything else for the good of the order?
No.
All right. Meeting adjourned? Okay. That's a goodbye. Have a good night, guys.
Right.